Buenas and half a day, everyone. Welcome to the Guam Congress Building. This public hearing by the Committee on Maritime and Air Transportation, Parks, Tourism, Higher Education, and the Advancement of Women, Youth, and Senior Citizens is hereby called to order. Today is Wednesday, May 3rd, 2023, and the time now is 2:01 p.m. For the record and in accordance with the Open Government Law, notice for this hearing were sent on April 26th and again on May 1st. In addition, this hearing was noticed on the Guam Legislature website and the Guam Public Notice website. Joining me here this afternoon, my Vice Chair, Senator Jesse Lujan, committee members, Senator Roy Kanata, Senator Telo Taitagui, and Senator Tom Fisher. Sidus Masi colleagues for joining us. Before we proceed with the discussion, I'd like to first provide some general rules of conduct for those in attendance. The conduct of this hearing shall be as follows. Written testimonies shall be submitted to the committee. Please provide the legislative staff with your written testimony for photocopying. Testimony may be read, and lengthy testimony should be summarized to about 5 minutes. Those testifying will be allowed to present written or oral testimony. Once you are done, please remain in the room for questions or additional testimony as may be desired by members of the committee. For those tuning in virtually, no, we don't have any virtual participation today, but questions and testimony shall be confined to the nature of the agenda. The current agenda is the appointment of Mr. Louis R. Baza to serve as member of the Port Authority of Guam Board of Directors. That's the first item on our agenda. And the chair will invite individuals who have signed up to testify to join us at the table. Before speaking, individuals testifying shall first be recognized by the chair and state your name for record purposes. The order of questioning will begin with the panel of senators, and if there is a need, we will have a second round of questioning. Personal inference about the character or motive of any senator or any individual testifying is not permitted. Any violations of this general rule of conduct will result in removal from the public hearing room. Individuals who fail to maintain proper form or decorum may be restricted from providing oral testimony and or may be asked to leave or escorted from the room. Proper form and decorum shall be practiced by all present in the public hearing room. The mission of the Port Authority of Guam is to provide full services to ocean vessels in support of loading and unloading cargo for Guam and Micronesia. The Port Authority of Guam is the main lifeline of consumer goods on the island and as such recognizes its responsibility to deliver these goods in a timely and efficient manner. In support of this mission, the Port Authority also provides land and infrastructure to private interests to further develop the maritime industries in Guam. As a public corporation, the Port Authority dedicates all of its profit to the upgrading of equipment and facilities and the continued growth of the island seaport. The Board of Directors is responsible for the planning, promotion, development, construction, operation, and maintenance of port facilities. The Port Authority plays a vital role in the lives of all citizens living on Guam. Because of our location, we are almost entirely dependent on our sea link to the United States and to foreign contacts. The recent passage of Public Law 29-125 has given the Port Authority conditional approval of its updated master plan. I'm sorry. At this time, I'd like to call upon individuals who sign up to testify. If you're here to testify for the appointment of Mr. Louis Baza, please join us at the table now. Port General Manager, Mr. Roy Respicio, former senator. You submitted written testimony, thank you. Board Member Dorothy Harris, thank you. Mr. Ron Uggan. Would you like to provide testimony or written testimony? Thank you. I will look. If you are here to provide your written testimony, please submit it to the staff to my left. They'll make photocopies for the panel. Okay, we will begin with Ms. Dorothy Harris, board member.
Buenas and Hafade, Madam Chair and members of the Legislative Committee on Maritime Transportation, Air Transportation, Parks, Tourism, Higher Education, and the Advancement of Youth and Senior Citizens. My name is Dorothy Harris, and I serve as the Vice Chair of the Port Authority of Guam Board of Directors. I am here to support the appointments of both Mr. Francisco Santos and Mr. Luis Baza to the PAG Board of Directors. Madam Chair, just for clarification, this is for both nominations, so I'm testifying on behalf of both. Thank you, ma'am.
Understood. Thank you, Ms. Harris.
Thank you. Mr. Santos has served both our country and our island community for over 56 years, having retired from the United States Navy and the port as its former harbor master. Mr. Santos is a keystone of the port in that because of his extensive experience, his contributions, and his prior capacity as chairman of PAG's board for 10 years, he has held us in place with his sound counsel and expertise. And if I speak candidly, we miss his presence, and we look forward to having him join us soon. I also lend my wholehearted support for the nomination of Mr. Baza. Throughout his 49 years serving as a government of Guam and public sector employee, and most recently as the port's former Deputy General Manager of Administration and Finance, he has served with excellence. And prior to his retirement from government service, he was most deservedly awarded the distinction of Honorary Doctor of Laws by the University of Guam. I thank you again, Madam Chair and committee members, for the opportunity to provide my support for these two outstanding nominations to the Port Authority Board of Directors.
Thank you very much, Ms. Harris. Okay, at this time, I guess I will invite Mr. Francisco Santos also to join, since we are receiving testimony for both of you. So this is a hearing, the confirmation hearing for both the appointment of Luis R. Baza and Francisco G. Santos to serve as a member of the Port Authority of Guam Board of Directors. Okay, I'd also like to recognize my colleagues who've joined us, Speaker Therese Terlahi, Minority Leader Frank Blas, and Senator Joanne Brown. Thank you very much, colleagues. We'll begin with Mr. Baza, followed by Mr. Santos.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman, Senator Blas, Senator Terlahi, Senator Lujan, Senator Kenneth, Senator Fisher, and Senator Joanne Brown, and Senator Telo Taitagui. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to provide testimony to serve as a board member for the Port Authority of Guam. My name is Luis R. Baza, and I'm very happy to be serving for the port. In my tenure at the Port Authority, I was appointed by the governor and concurred by the Port Board as the Deputy General Manager for Administration and Finance, effective December 13, 2019, until the time that I retired in December 31st, 2022. I assisted the General Manager in directing, promoting, and managing port assets and services, which includes full responsibility and accountability for all the port's internal administration and cost containment functions. I worked with the General Manager and Finance Controller in formulating agency-wide annual budget and business plan, and directing and reviewing expenditures in accordance with approved agency budget. I directed, promoted, and managed all of the port's assets and coordinated services provided to port tenants. I maintained good working relationships with the port users group, government and regulatory representative, and the general public. I worked closely with the general manager in planning and implementing the modernization and ongoing development of facilities and properties to support the port's immediate and long-term goals. In working within the private industry, which is about 13 years and 3 months with LSG Lufthansa Service, Guam, as an HR manager, inclusive of that, I was a safety and security facilitator and special assistant to the general manager with 10 months as an HR manager at Cabers Marine SRF. Although we operated under an at-will provision, I continued to apply some merit principles and practices with respect to effective documentation, progressive disciplinary action, effective communication, and training on sexual harassment and the policy on equal employment opportunity. I am a firm believer of due process, even in the operation of an at-will provision. In short, my experience and training for both public and private institutions, I will provide policy directives to the General Manager and its management team to ensure that programs and activities at the Port, and most particularly in its modernization plan and the acquisition of new gantries and equipment, and in preparation of the military build-up, will come to fruition. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to provide testimony. If there are any questions that you may have, I'll be happy to discuss them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Baza. Now we'll move on to the testimony from Mr. Francisco G. Santos.
Alpha Day and Buenas, Madam Chair and members of your committee. I consider a great honor to come before you this afternoon and ask for your, fine favor in me and continue to nominate me to serve as one of the board members for the Port Authority of Guam. But first of all, I'd like to express my thanks and gratitude to Governor Guerrero and Lieutenant Governor Justin Orio for the trust and confidence in me to continue to serve as one of the board members for the Port Authority of Guam. And also, my sincere thanks to all of you to find favor in me to continue to serve as one of the board members for the Port Authority of Guam. Let me give you a few briefings about myself. I retired in the United States Navy for 20 years as a chief boatswain in the Navy. During my 20 years in the Navy, I served in various types of vessels, from crew transport, cargo vessel, ammunition ship, tanker, seagoing tug, and other small vessel in the Navy. Also, during my time in the Navy, I was also sent by the United States Navy to Saigon before the war to train some of the Vietnamese Navy for the port operation and waterfront facility training. And I consider that it's a great honor for the knowledge and experience that I acquired in the Navy. We commissioned the Cargo Handling Battalion 2 in Oakland, California in 1962. Our mission is to load and to discharge cargo in various types of vessels. And also during my time in the port as a port harbor master for 36 years, I served as acting capacity as assistant operation manager, assistant general manager, and also acting general manager. And I consider that a great honor and privilege for me to continue to serve as one of the board members for the Port Authority of Guam and to serve the people of Guam. We have so many projects in the port, many achievements. And I give credit to our management team and also to our port employees. The morale of the port employees, let's say, is high. We have few. It doesn't matter what administration that's also disappointed in their work. But again, we have so many projects at the port. And if you confirm me as one of the board members for the Port Authority of Guam, I will do my very, very best to work together with the management team to make sure that the port move forward. Make sure that equipment, the acquisition of new equipment to meet the different challenge of many new vessels that will be coming to Guam. And also, Madam Chair and members of the committee, we should all be proud of the Port Authority of Guam. I am proud when one of the Defense Department personnel approached me and say, Mr. Santos, you have one of the modernized port in the South Pacific. And I agree with him. If you look our surrounding, no place or no port in the South Pacific that can compare to our port. We have a deep draft port. We can accommodate deep draft vessel coming to Guam, not only cargo vessel, container vessel, but even tankers. Just to brief you regarding the port, regarding the berth facility of our port, we have the hotel wharf, which is under project at this time. We have mobile dock, which we accommodate medium tanker that only can accommodate 40 feet draft vessel. We have F1 that we can accommodate bigger tanker up to 54 feet draft. And of course, the Port Authority from F3 to F6, we have different depth of draft alongside the dock. And I meet with some of the Navy during the time when the build-up, when they mentioned about build-up in Guam. And I mentioned to them that we can accommodate two of the largest roll-on road vessels of the marine cargo that will be coming to Guam. I said, yes, we can accommodate two large roll-on, roll-off vessels. And again, I'm very, very proud, to be one of the board members for the Port Authority of Guam. I'm here to serve the people of Guam, not for me to be served. I will do my very, very best to work with you senators. If you have any question that I cannot answer, of course, we will find some answer to respond to your question. And I'm very, very proud to sit before you this afternoon and to thank you so much. And I hope that you will support me in the nomination for one of the board members for the Port Authority of Guam. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Santos. Now we'll start with questions from the panel of senators. We'll begin with Vice Chair Jesse Lujan.
Madam Chair, I'll yield and we can close. We'll give it to the members of the committee first.
Thank you very much. Senator Kanata.
I believe both of you have already been serving the island and the people of Guam for some time, so I have no questions. I wish you guys all the best and continue all your service to the people and let us know what we can do to help you guys. Again, keep up the good work and God bless. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Senator Kanata. Senator Fisher.
Thank you. Madam Chair, are we addressing questions just one at a time or the entire panel?
You may ask them both questions at this time.
Okay. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, gentlemen. I have some questions for Ms. Cannot? The microphone's on. Closer. Okay. I have questions for you, Mr. Baza, and thank you for standing up to perform this duty. I know that it is public service, and we appreciate it. What do you, on the board at the port, what do you believe your responsibility to be?
Our responsibility is as policy people. Our responsibility is more policy perspective. The management over there is going to present some things to us. We're not going to micromanage the managers in there. We're going to go in there and we're going to look at it from a policy perspective. Okay. That's basically our role. Yeah.
Do you feel that you have? Do you feel like you have a responsibility to exercise your best professional judgment?
I came from there, and when I was working there, I continued to provide the same thing I'm going to do. I'm going to, if I see that there's a violation of law, if I see that things need to be corrected because it's not in line with our mission, then I will say something about it. I've been consistent since I started working down there in 2019 and continue until I retired in 2021, and just recently in December of 2022.
How would you describe your management style, I suppose? Are you proactive, or do you just rely on other people's representations? Or?
Thank you for that question. I am proactive. I will look I have to really analyze things on my own. I'm not going to depend on even when I was the deputy general manager, I have my own sides of things that I want to do. And, I've discussed issues with the management team. And so far since I left, we've been very consistent with what we want to do, and that is to provide the vision and the mission that we put together to ensure that, the company is going to be servicing the people of Guam. At least 90% of the supply chain goes out to the people of Guam. We want to make sure that that's done. Even during COVID, we want to make sure it's done, and done efficiently and effectively.
Okay. All right. I'm encouraged to learn that you consider yourself to be proactive. As I understand it, you don't rely on people's representations, but you'll look into the issues yourself. Is that a
Yes,
correct
sir.
assessment?
Yes, Senator.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that answer. I was looking at your work history. You were at the Civil Service Commission before you went to the port?
Yes, sir. I grew up there. Actually, I started as a Personal Management Analyst 1 in 1985, and then all the way up to Personnel Administrator, and then I was appointed as Executive Director by then Carl Gutierrez. Stayed there for about 3 years, and then I retired in the government. And then I worked as an HR manager for LSG Luz Santos Service Guam, Inc. for about 13 and a half years, and then I transferred over to Cabas Marine SRF. So in terms of private sector, I have a lot of experience with private sector. I understand the difference between government and private sector. So being a commissioner at Civil Service, I actually have that mindset of, time is money, knowledge is power, and we make sure that we're efficient and we're effective. Even in the government, because in the private sector, we have to rock and roll. We got to make sure that, people do their jobs and do the jobs efficiently and effectively. And the hour provision, you can fire people anytime with or without cause. However, I applied some merit system principles when I was in this private sector so that at least we have at least some kind of a due process for employees that are working for us.
Okay. All right. Do you feel any sort of responsibility to the stakeholders in the port as well as the taxpayers as far as, fiduciary responsibility or financial responsibility?
Absolutely, Senator. We have a fiduciary responsibility for the people of Guam. I mean, that company down there is about $45 million business. We have to make sure that whatever we do is to benefit the people of Guam and our stakeholders and our customers and our port user group.
I think, as a matter of fact, I think the port is the largest economic driver for our economy, is it not? Maybe the airport too, but...
Yes, thank you for asking that question. During COVID, we never closed shop. I mean, if we close shop, then the people of Guam are going to suffer. The private companies are going to suffer. So, we work tirelessly with the general manager and the deputy general managers to ensure that we convince our people that, you need to come to work, because if you don't come to work, it's going to hurt the people of Guam. So with the direction of our general manager, we opened a clinic down there. I mean, we did everything we can to make sure that our employees are happy, that employees are comfortable to come to work. A lot of town hall meetings that we've been doing this to try to encourage our employees that they need to be at work.
Okay. This isn't specifically to you, but board members at the Port Authority. Do you, the qualities, well, let me ask you, what qualities should we senators look for in board members?
Well, for one thing, when you look at a board member, you got to make sure that they have integrity, they're honest, they're transparent, and ensure that they're able to think independently.
I'm sorry, the what?
To think independently and make decisions on their own, but also collaborate amongst each other. I'm kind of used to being a civil service commissioner where we can't collaborate with each other because of cases. When you have a case, you can't discuss anything because of the secret deliberation. You can't do that, but at least with the Port Authority, we can discuss it during meetings, what we want to do, where we want to go. So, yeah, I think those traits are very important,
So, I'm sorry, go ahead. I was just going to say, so integrity, honesty.
And transparency.
And transparency. What about just generally good judgment?
And of course, yeah. you have to have good judgment when you're making those decisions.
Okay, all right. And you also say, and transparency?
You have to be transparent.
Right. Sir, I'd like to just reflect a little bit. I know that you were at the Civil Service Commission before you went to the port, correct?
Yes, sir.
Why did you go to the port? How did that happen?
Well, I was actually, when the administration took over, actually, I was chairman there. And then
Chairman at CSC?
a Civil Service Commission, yes. And then the governor asked me if I wanted to unretire myself because I was already retired,
Okay.
you know. And I actually, she even was wondering how come I said I have to really talk to my wife and my children because getting out of retirement again is going to be a change of my life, you know. And, and I had to think about it. I didn't just make the decision right away. I think it took me about a month, you know. And I thought the governor changed her mind, so she called me up again and asked. Oh, the secretary called me up to meet with her to ask me if I was still interested in going back to the Port Authority. And I said, well, okay, maybe I'll give it a whirl. You know, and that's what happened.
And in response to the governor's call, you became deputy general manager?
Deputy General Manager, yes.
Deputy general manager. And then prior to that, were you just a member of the Civil Service Commission?
Yes, I was a member at Civil Service Commission, but at the same time when I was a member at Civil Service Commission, I was doing two jobs. I was actually the HR manager for LSG Sky Chef, so I was kind of doing dual function, you know, and I'm surprised I'm still married and doing both jobs.
Okay. Well, I'm glad, you know, this concept of, you know, you transitioning, it leads me to my next series of questions. When you were at the Civil Service Commission, did you have any involvement in a case involving an employee by the name of Francis Cepeda?
I'm sorry, Senator. There's so many cases that we deal with. I'm not certain.
Well, she was one of people colloquially known as the Port 7. Do you recall that case?
Oh, well, I didn't sit on the Port 7 cases. I recused myself. And the reason why I recused myself, because when I was chairman there, I had a working relationship with Mike Phillips, Attorney Mike Phillips, and I had to disclose that during the hearing. And although my commissioners wanted me to just stay, two of the legal counsels for the parties, they insisted that I recuse myself. So in the spirit of don't want to compromise the case, I recused myself.
So is it your testimony you had no involvement with any of the port? I'll read the names because I don't want to leave an ambiguity. We had a Francis Cepeda, Vivian Leon.
Yes.
Bernadette Stern.
Yes.
Leonara, I believe. Leon Guerrero.
Yes.
Josette Havalosa.
Yes.
I'm not sure of her first name. I think the last name is Rocio, or perhaps...
Rocio, Francine Rocio.
And then a gentleman by the name of Guevara.
Jojo Guevara.
Did you have any involvement with those gentlemen, or any of those cases while you were at the Civil Service Commission?
No. As a matter of fact, I know one person. Her name's Vivian Leon. I know her because, you know, HR managers, HR people know each other there, but I've never really worked with Vivian, honestly, in any of the cases.
Okay.
You know, Port Authority, when there's a post audit down there at the Port Authority, we usually send Dan Young Guerrero, who is the director now, you know, because he worked for the port, so we send him down there to do the audits.
Tell me how you were able to recuse yourself from the commission. Lawyers often call it a Chinese wall. Did you? How can we be confident that you were in fact recused from these cases and had no involvement, nor did you inform yourself of the substance of the cases? In fact, was there a memo to file, anything like that?
I don't believe so, Senator Fisher. When all these parties came in, you know, I had to disclose to the commissioners and the people, the public, that I have relationship with Mike Phillips.
Okay.
You know, through LSG, because he's running Mount Carmel and we were catering Mount Carmel, and that's how I met with him.
Okay.
Even I'm HR manager, I'm also marketing and many things over there.
Okay.
So because of that, I had to disclose that information.
Okay.
But the commissioners, when they deliberated, they didn't want me to recuse myself.
Okay.
But because there's two legal counsel that said I should recuse myself, I just went on ahead and said, commissioners, I have to do this.
Okay.
So I don't want to compromise anything here.
Okay, and I understand that. Just a real quick question. If you conflicted yourself and you recused yourself from involvement in the Port 7 cases when you were at the Civil Service Commission, how is it you were able to sign off on 7 settlement agreements for the Port 7 when you were at the port? I mean, the very same issue, your relationship with Mike Phillips that dogged you or followed you at the Civil Service Commission, followed you right across the street to the port. So what was it that happened? Tell me about the change that made it possible for you now to re-enter the case.
Well, for one thing, I'm no longer working for the port, for LSG Sky Chef.
You're no longer what?
When I work for the port, I'm no longer working with LSG Sky Chef. I don't have any more relationship with Mike Phillips in terms of business relationship. I've never really heard these cases. So I reviewed it. I looked at the case one by one. And in looking at the case one by one, I've identified through my readings that when management knew or should have known, it was beyond the 60-day mandate.
Okay,
And consistently, when I was looking at that...
Just to repeat the question, sir, what was it that changed that allowed you to participate in a series of cases for which you had earlier recused yourself? Something must have changed.
I wanted to look at these cases because I never looked at it. Because remember, Mr. Senator Fisher, we have a lawsuit here, okay? And the liability keeps getting higher and higher and higher and higher. So I felt as Deputy General Manager for Administration and Finance and being fiduciary, making sure that we look at how much are we going to pay these people. I had to review these cases first.
Okay, sir, I think we're getting a little bit off track. The question was
And
simple.
I think we're talking about civil service. I thought I'm here for...
Mr.
I'm
Baza,
sorry, but...
Mr. Baza, the question is simply this.
Well, I think I've answered your question.
What changed?
What changed? Well, because I recused myself. I recused myself.
The question, please,
well,
sir.
You're repeating yourself with Civil Service Commission, sir. I'm here not to be a commissioner. I'm here to work for the Port Authority.
Right,
okay,
we're
you're asking me questions about Civil Service Commission and my situation with respect to why I looked at these cases, because it's important to look at some of these pending cases. It's important that I see it.
Yes, but is that not the concept behind recusing yourself? Because you ought not to look at the case.
Because
which leads me back to the same question, sir.
Because I recused myself.
What set of facts changed that allowed you now to intervene in the cases when prior to that you felt you couldn't?
I think I answered your question.
Okay, so you have nothing further to say on that?
Nothing further.
All right. Earlier, sir, I asked you, what are the qualities we should look at? What are the qualities we should look at when we are choosing who should be a member of the board? And you said integrity. Nobody would disagree with that. Honesty, transparency. When you came over to the Port Authority, did you tell the other board members that you had been at the Civil Service Commission and, to accept what you said, that while at the Civil Service Commission, cases involving the port were under consideration? Did you inform the board members?
No, I didn't.
Why not?
Because I was appointed to go down there and be the Deputy General Manager for Administration and Finance. And when I'm sitting in there and I'm looking at some of the pending cases that we have down there, and it's not only the Port 7, sir. There's more than the Port 7 that I've looked at, and it's not just the Port 7. And why are we focusing on the Port 7? That's already a done deal.
Do you think?
But there's other cases in there as well that happened in the past.
Do you think?
And I've actually argued it at Civil Service Commission and won it.
Do you think you were being transparent when you kept that information from the other members of the board?
Well, when I presented it to the board about what I found, that's being transparent.
Well, that may have been transparent, but my question is, did you?
I think I answered your question.
Okay, well, I'll ask it again.
Senator Fisher, and I think I already answered it.
Are you refusing to answer questions?
No, I've already answered your question.
Are you refusing to answer questions?
I'm not refusing. I answered your question, sir.
Okay, do you think?
And I know what you're trying to do. I already answered your question.
Do you think you were being transparent when you didn't inform the board members that you had been at the Civil Service Commission while those cases were there?
I believe I answered your question.
Yeah, well, I missed it.
Well, that's for
yes
your
or
opinion,
no?
but I answered your question.
Okay, well, I'm sorry? He's very hostile. I know, I've noticed that. I'm a little concerned about his temperament. But,
For the record, Madam Chair, it sounds like the person who's being here for confirmation is being very hostile. It's a very simple question, and whether you want to answer it 3 times, I think you should. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I thought
Thank you,
this was a
Senator Titlegy.
confirmation.
Please wait your turn to be recognized. Senator Fisher, please wrap up your questions.
yes. Yes. I'm sorry? I wasn't aware that we were going in rounds. Okay. Okay, well, fair enough. But why are you shutting me down now?
I'm not shutting you down, Senator Fisher. You've had a lot of time. I'd like to also give time to, you've had over 15 minutes of questioning.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'll
This is-
give you in the second round of questioning.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
I
you're
would,
welcome.
but this is an oversight.
This is not an oversight hearing.
Well, this is a confirmation hearing.
That
and
is correct.
We are not here to bury
Thank you,
facts.
Senator Fisher.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on. Senator Titlegy, you may ask your question.
Okay, so are we changing the rules? Madam Chair, are we doing
The
a
rules
second
have
round?
not changed, Senator Titlegy. I mentioned in the beginning of this hearing
Okay.
that we will have 2 rounds of questioning if necessary. So there are a lot of senators here today to ask questions. If Senator Fisher would still like to ask questions, we will ask. We have
2
multiple
rounds. Okay, my mistake. I didn't hear
items
the
on
2
the
rounds.
agenda.
Yeah, I didn't hear
Okay,
the
I
2
said if
rounds.
there
So
were
I'll do
necessary.
one for one confirmation nominee, and then I'll do my second round for the next one,
Please
if
ask
that's
both
okay.
your questions at this
Okay.
time.
So thank you so much for being here and those who came to testify. I've in all my years sitting here, I've never seen any person who's here to be confirmed be so hostile that you're doing right now. I mean, it's as simple just to answer the question and keep cool about it.
I'm
Just
cool.
answer it.
I answered the question already.
It's
Senator Tello.
you're not answering it, you're skating through it, not really answering it, because
But
we can
then
all
that-
can hear it.
but then that's your
and
opinion.
And when you review the tape, you'll see it as well.
And that's
But
your
Mr.
opinion.
Baza, I know you have a lot of experience. My concerns, a lot of it had to do with civil service, and now you're coming here. And I've watched the board meetings. I've seen what was going on over there. And then I've also, sent letters to the Attorney General asking for them to review the OPA's report, specifically 2201, 2103, and 2109 by the OPA's report. And I'm pretty sure you read them too, considering your position at the port. So I have a question. You want to sit on the board, and these reports came through. If you were on the board when these reports came through, what would you have done?
I need to be certain about what law you're talking about.
You haven't read the OPA's report on the findings? I mean, the OPA's report, yeah, on the port, on their findings? You
Well,
haven't
I
read
did.
those?
I did.
Okay, so my question is, you're sitting here today wanting to sit on the board. So my question is, if you had read those reports, which I'm sure you have, how would you respond to those reports as a board member? Would you have continued to give those raises or those questions that were brought up as a board member?
Okay. So those questions that the OPA is inquiring, we answered the OPA, I think 5 times, and we told the OPA that, and if I can remember back, the OPA staff, they're really going back to the Department of Administration rules and regulations. They're saying that we violated the Department of Administration rules and regulations. The thing is we have our own rules and regulations at the port. And the rules and regulations at the port is different from DOA rules. When they talk about, increments, from steps 1 to 7 is 1 year, 7 to 10, 18 months, and 10 to 20 is 2 years. They're focusing there, and we constantly be telling them, listen, the rules and regulations of the port is ratified by the legislature. So why are we keep focusing on the rules and regs that is with the DOA? I'm a proponent of uniform and unified rules and regulations, but they took away the arms and legs of Civil Service Commission and gave the autonomy to different autonomous agencies, and that's why they have their own rules. So if I can remember back with the audits that what the OPA was saying, we keep telling the OPA that their findings is inconsistent with the Department of Administration rules and regulations. But, you know, they reported it. They reported it that way, although my general manager and us, we argued otherwise, they reported it that way.
Okay, Mr. Baza, what about 2103?
What's 2103?
Yeah, that was also a report stating 2103 and 2109 was talking about the overpayment of individuals, and the OPA also made a comment on that. How do you explain that?
Overpayment?
Well, it's obvious you haven't read, then you're not familiar with
Again-
2103. I thought you would
okay,
be, considering you were the port's financial.
I'm sorry, ma'am.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Senator. I'm trying to remember.
Trying to remember?
Yeah. Please
It's-
forgive
it's-
me.
it's,
Maybe you.
Well, it seems your memory today has been, several times you can't remember. But, this
sorry,
position is very
I'm sorry,
important. Like you said earlier, is a very important position. And this, this whole asking you questions is to find out if you're capable of sitting in such an important position. I mean, it's obvious you do have the experience working at the Port Authority of Guam. But it's you've just been really difficult to talk to. Have you taken an ethics course, by the way?
I teach it.
You teach an ethics course.
Yes,
When's the last
ma'am.
time you took one for yourself?
I even have Professor Ogum behind me.
Right, teaching one is different, but sitting in the course and taking it, because I think it's by law, right?
I took it as well.
Uh-huh.
I took it as well. The ethics is required to take the ethics rules and regulations. It's mandated, actually, so I took it. In fact, I took it twice, and I teach it.
Okay.
I know what it means, Senator.
To be
Carrillo.
ethical?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
Madam Chairman.
Oh, you're going to run
No,
to
no, I'm
the
being
chair?
questioned. I'm
Mr.
Chairman.
Baza, I am a committee
I'll just set a
member.
reminder for everyone in the room.
Yeah.
I read the rules of conduct to begin with, and we will not make any personal inference as to the character of any individual, whether it's the person testifying
I did
or
not
the
make
senators.
any reference to any
Senator,
character.
I'm
I asked if
giving
the
a general
individual.
reminder,
Point
a
of
general
personal-
reminder to all
Point
those
of personal
in attendance.
privilege, ma'am. She made no such
I made
insinuation.
nothing. I
Thank
just
you, Senator
asked.
Fisher. You may continue your question, Senator Tida,
Okay,
please.
thank you. Mr. Baza, it's, let's move on now to procurement. What is the board's responsibility when it comes to procurement?
Well, we want to make sure that we follow the procurement, that management follows the procurement laws and rules and regulations.
Okay, on procurement. And do you also oversee those who are sitting there at the port? Like, I think recently you had Claudia from GSA come down to the port to do some procurement for the port. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Have you moved anybody from the port that was in procurement to another agency?
We have.
So why would you
detail
bring-
for training and development.
Okay, and I'm sorry, but could you answer that? Why would you require somebody from GSA to come down and do procurement when you've had people in procurement and move them out of the port? Is that something that the board gets involved with?
No, ma'am.
You don't get involved. But if you see something like that happen, would you say something?
Definitely we will question management if that's going on. But again, remember, we're policy. If I'm going to sit as a commission, as a board of directors, we're policy. We're not going to micromanage the
Okay.
manager.
Mr. Baza, it's obvious that, we had Mr. Byrne here, and we had asked him about the procurement, an individual who is at the port, who's moved and has been gone from the port for 2 years. And yet you're not bringing that individual back, and that's under your jurisdiction. Well, still at the port, you were still employed at there, and then you're telling me one thing that you can't remember. There's a lot of memory loss here today. So, with that, Mr. Baza,
Again,
I appreciate all the work that you've done to Guam for our community, but at this point, I will stop right now and allow another senator to ask questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Speaker Terlahi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Mr. Baza, thank you for your testimony today. Could you just talk to us about, so you're transitioning from a role, when did you retire?
December 31st, 2022.
So it's been a couple months, maybe 3 months now. So can you just talk to us about how you feel it's going to be to, you were pretty much you were the deputy general manager, number 2 in the agency. You're also, it looks like, in charge of finances and HR.
Yeah, I had 7 departments under me.
And when you come back as a board member, how will your role be different, I guess?
My role is policy. As a board, my always understanding, even as a board member at Civil Services, we're policy people. We don't get involved in the administration of the process, but if we see that there's something going on that could be a violation of law or rule, then we get involved. But again, we don't micromanage management.
What are your goals as a board member? Do you think the board needs to change policy, or what are you thinking?
If need be and the policy needs to be changed, we will talk about it and get it changed. And if we're going to change the policy, we change it to make it better. If it's the status quo, then I think we can tweak it a little bit if it's still okay. But if it's a bad policy, we should make changes, and we will recommend that to the management team.
So what about you? What would you recommend?
Right now, because I just left a few months ago, I don't see any changes so far in my eyes. You know, of course, we have to collaborate with other board directors, and if they see that needs to happen, then so be it, we can discuss it. But at the same time, again, we don't want to get involved in the administration of what management is doing. We will get involved from a policy perspective.
So in your time as in the administration of the port and working there, you found that the status quo is okay, except for some tweaking that might need to happen.
If it need be, right now, from what I'm seeing, I think that we need to. I think we need to look at our rules and regulations again and change it and update it because it's already far back. Not very far back, but I think we need to update the rules and regulations for the Port Authority of Guam. That's for sure.
Why?
Because there's probably new rules, new laws that are coming out that we need to change. And I think we were looking at that already, that we need to update whatever we have to make sure that we're current.
We've been having some hearings regarding the role of customs at the port and kind of coming down hard on customs and the Guam Police Department. We want them to have an increased presence, I guess, at the port and make sure that we're dealing with a methamphetamine crisis on Guam, and we don't want that coming in through the ports. Do you have any ideas of pretty much, I think there's an understanding that this is a very real possibility that that's where the drugs are coming in. And do you have any suggestions for the board as to policy to change to prevent that?
Well, thank you for asking that, Senator Talai. Since we took over, we actually opened customs and quarantine. Actually, they have access to the Port Authority anytime. They have access. In fact, we keep hearing that drugs are coming in from the port. I mean, I'm even doing something that I'm not even supposed to be doing. Sometimes I come at 2 in the morning, I take a golf cart and I go around checking, because I used to be a safety security facilitator. I'm concerned too. So people don't know I'm coming in there. I'll just go in there and I get a card and I'll go around. Sometimes my GM gets mad at me saying, "What are you doing, Louis?" I go, I'm concerned, But we have the same vision. We want to make sure that we're protected too, because we keep hearing that it's coming from the port. We've had meetings with Customs and Quarantine. We've opened the doors. We're assisting them to, to give them more access. We gave them all the access, actually not more access. We gave them access to go into the port anytime they want to. So, we're doing our best. We're doing our due diligence. In fact, I think if they want to open a K9, that's fine. That'll be good too, to identify if there's drugs going around. And we changed the policy over there now at the port. From my understanding, if a container is leaking or it's not locked, everything stops. The gantry stops, and then people are called in to make sure that Customs and Quarantine is contacting port police are contacted in to check that container. So
Because it's
because
suspected to have been opened or something?
either it's not locked, and there's a policy. If it's not locked, it could be compromised.
All right. At a certain point during some of the hearings, I think we thought we came to an understanding with the port that Customs was going not to have to pay rent down there. Is that still the situation? Do they pay rent? No, right?
They're
Okay.
not. They're not paying rent
All
at
right,
all.
just confirming that. That's supposed to be the arrangement.
As a matter
And
of
do they
fact,
have an office?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we upgraded them
Okay.
before I left.
Good, thank you. And, all right, so my understanding from the briefing we had this morning for the master plan is that the port is upgrading its information systems, its technology, or its program, and that they're going to allow Customs to have a portal to be able to access the information and hopefully digitize its review as well. Are you familiar with that part of the operations?
Well, I remember that we were working with the WSP with respect to, upgrading our MIS system, or even cybersecurity system. So, again, we're doing everything we can to try to upgrade our system so that, we can identify, catch, and we're sharing it with Customs and Quarantine, yes. Yeah.
All right, well, my understanding is Customs has to come up with its own system and its own program, and then try to make it compatible with the ports. And I'm just going to put it out there. I'm hoping the port can find a way to just give Customs access like immediately instead of waiting for that.
Well, that information, thank you. From a policy perspective, we would talk to the management team and said, hey, we need to help each other out.
Yeah. All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Speaker. Senator Brown.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. For purposes of clarification, are we asking both the nominees on this first round questions? Are we asking one nominee and then the second nominee? What is the process? So,
You're able to ask them both at this time.
okay. But I'm going to start with Chairman Santos. Good afternoon, Chairman Santos. It's
Good afternoon, Senator
been a
Brown.
while since we've seen each other and worked with each other.
I know, I miss you so much.
Mr. Chairman, we did work for 5 years together. Of the 6 years I worked at the Port Authority, you were my chairman for 5 years. And, we worked toward addressing the accountability of the operations of the port, and certainly worked towards obtaining the bond, the $72 million bond, which was quite an effort because the Port Authority in its history up until then never had executed a bond. With intending that the revenues of this would go to upgrading the much-needed fiscal infrastructure of the port. So a lot of time, work, and effort, and you were there. You were there every step of the way.
Yes, Senator, I give you credit, to expedite the bond that we acquire. We worked so hard for that. We went off island. We sit with different type of people, finance people. We sit down, we put everything together, then finally the bond is approved. And I give you credit for that also, Senator Brown.
Well, and certainly we had a lot of good people on the team that helped execute that. But I wanted to ask you, Mr. Chair, because, I had the pleasure of working with you, but you very much the position, decisions that were made by you and the fellow board members was to ensure the accountability of the port, ensure that the port funds were properly spent. And I've been troubled a bit. I mean, since I left the Port Authority, the position that you've taken has changed so drastically, and I'm not clear about as to why that has happened. I mean, with regards to the finances, even in the legal cases that the port had, the decision was always to ensure the interests of the port was protected and to pursue those issues, even if we had to go to court. I mean, nothing short of a court order would ever have us pay out any money by the port. Since then, however, sir, your position has drastically changed. I mean, it's almost as if the floodgates, the financial floodgates of the port are wide open, with monies being paid out even without court order. And those cases that we had that, while some controversial and visible, there were others that involved adverse actions that almost every single one, the agenda of your management team was to pay out without court orders, without ensuring that these cases went through the full judicial process so that if a decision was made by a judge, then we knew indeed that that was the decision of the land and that we would adhere to it. But without that, within a matter of months, the port paid out millions of dollars. Why is that?
Of course, Senator Brown, on that case, get our advice from our legal counsel.
And who is Mr. Chair, if I don't mind, who is your legal counsel? Because I understand one of the first things that happened is
in the past,
you suspended, your very seasoned counsel that was representing the port, Mr. Phillips, in these cases. Who was your counsel?
They changed the legal counsel and somebody replaced McDonald.
Well, he was there for a very short time and quickly left.
He was there, and we get recommendation from him. Before the board make any decision, we ask our legal counsel for his advice, because none of the board members are really expert in legal matter. So we rely on our legal counsel to give us all the input, all the information. Once they give us the information, then I'm just one of the board members. Then all the other board members will make they agree to make it, to approve it or disapprove.
Mr. Chairman, the YTK case, that case existed for many, many years prior to our time together. We had gone to the Supreme Court of Guam. That case went all the way up to the Supreme Court of Guam in the summer of 2018, and we had argued that case at the challenge of YTK with regards to them believing that the Port Authority of Guam owed between $14 to $18 million on a contract that we, in your management team and the board, determined was not a legal contract.
I understand. Let me refer back on the YTK case, Senator Brown. Even from the humble beginning, when YTK is to meet their lease agreement, they want to lease Hotel War for fish operation, and management and YTK, they work together. They have meeting. Then when they have that meeting, and if they want to make any recommendation from the management, they come to the board. But whenever then we approve the lease for 5 years, then they extend it for another 5 years. They have to go to the legislature for that case.
I know, I'm familiar with the issues, including the fact that company for many years never paid on their lease agreement. But the reason I'm asking that question, Mr. Chairman, is because certainly at the time, Senator Tom Addo was the oversight chair here at the legislature.
Of course.
And he was very concerned somehow that because we were members of the Calvo Tenorio administration, that we were going to settle YTK in favor of his first cousin that was the principal owner of YTK. That never happened, Mr. Chair, and we fought every single step of the way, all the way up to the Supreme Court of Guam, because we really believed the Port Authority had no obligation to pay this company on this lease, that it was not a valid and legal lease, and that ultimately the Port Authority of Guam owed nothing to this company. The reason I'm stating this, sir, is within a very short period of time, one of the top agendas of your general manager was to do a mediation. Right. While we were waiting for Supreme Court of Guam decision that was decided by the Port Authority of Guam board. I believe it was referenced that he may have asked you for funds to authorize to pay the mediator. There was a specific date and time that this meeting was supposed to occur, but of course that became very public, with the intent of trying to settle with a casual comment, oh, we just happened to meet each other, and all of a sudden your new general manager, who had no authorization from the board, no experience with these issues, was going to sit down with a principal member of YTK
I give you credit, Senator
with a
Brown, for your
mediator,
hard work.
while these cases, while we were waiting for a legal decision of the Supreme Court of Guam, all the resources of the port, the money that had been invested to get to that. I'm not here to ask you questions, nor do I want any comment from your general manager.
Madam Chair, is this really fair, Madam Chair?
Chair, I am speaking to the nominee.
I think these questions are better directed at me as general manager, not for the nominees, Madam
Thank you
Chair.
very
I
much.
am speaking to the
Thank
nominee.
you, everyone. Okay, thank you. Yes, I understand. Senator Brown, please ask your questions to the
I am
nominee.
asking my
understand.
question.
Thank you. I think it is relevant. It does have to do with the work that
Mr.
Mr.
Chairman.
Santos has done on the board. You may
Mr.
continue, Senator
Chairman,
Brown.
did you authorize funding for the mediator? Did you authorize your general manager to meet with YTK?
I never authorize anybody to meet with the general manager. That is micromanagement. I let the manager meet with those people that are concerned regarding the port.
Would you allow that? Do you understand the seriousness of the fact that we were pending a decision of the Supreme Court of Guam on a legal case that your board authorized, and your general manager was attempting to engage with the principals of YTK? Were you aware of that?
I cannot recall that.
And you're not aware that he ever approached you for any funding to pay for a mediator? That he had a specific time and date to meet at this office?
I can remember, Senator Brown, nobody ever come approach me to make a payment to YTK.
And did you ever do anything when that information was made aware? You were never made aware of this, sir?
I was not unaware of that. Nobody will come directly to me and say, Mr. Santos, we want to pay this. Manager will come to me and say, we have to pay this agency or YTK. I will confront it, my other board member, for approval.
Did your general manager ever relate to you and disclose that he may have had any business dealings or consultancy with the principal of YTK prior to him becoming general manager of the board? Or general manager of the port?
With due respect, Senator Brown, sometime when management make a discussion with YTK or other agency, they usually had a meeting with our legal counsel. And when they find any solution from their meeting, then they make a recommendation to the board. The board never involved with sitting down with other agency to make any decision. That is not our job.
Mr. Chairman, do you think it's appropriate that that occurred without your authorization or the board's authorization?
I never authorized anything without my other board member approval.
Do you know that that happened?
I cannot recall it, Senator.
Mr. Chairman, what was the ultimate decision of the Supreme Court of Guam? Because that's the first time you had a conversation since I left the port.
You know, we always, sometimes Senator Brown, we sit down, we discuss why is this YTK taking so long? You know, sometimes we sit down, we discuss that, even with our legal counsel. How come all this legal matter taking so long to solve? And that's why the port costing so much money because of the many delays. And we are paying the legal counsel for that.
Mr. Chairman, what was the ultimate decision of the Supreme Court of Guam?
The decision of Guam?
The Supreme Court of Guam on that case?
I cannot recall now. I'm sorry, Joanne.
Mr. Chairman, that's probably the first conversation we have since I left the Port of Guam.
I know
You
it's
called me
been a
on
long
that
time
case.
already.
You don't recall the decision?
No, I cannot recall right now.
You don't recall the decision?
Maybe if I could recall back, maybe I could remember.
You don't recall the decision that the Supreme Court of Guam determined that that contract was null and void and that
Of
the Port
course,
Authority
I
owed
remember.
nothing?
I remember that contract between the port and the YTK is void. I remember that.
And you didn't realize your general manager could have jeopardized that by sitting down in mediation with the representatives of YTK prior to that decision coming down?
They can have a meeting, but for any approval, they have to go to the board.
You mentioned, of course, when we did go for the bond, because we did, and we certainly were there every step of the way, Mr. Chair, in representing, as we did, to the bond investors, what we were going to do and what our commitments were with regards to executing the fund should they buy our bonds and actually give us the $72 million. I wanted to ask you, because it's recently surfaced here to your board, that you literally have fallen beyond your debt service ratio of 1.25, which is a requirement of the bond investors to ensure the viability of the port, to ensure that their bonds are repaid. That is pretty serious. It means you're spending more than you're supposed to put in reserve so that the bond investors have comfort level that their debt service is going to be paid. Are you aware of that?
I can't remember that.
This was supposedly
But remember,
reported in your
Senator-
February meeting just earlier this year. Are you aware of this?
Yes. Also, Senator Brown, remember when we get the 70 million bond for the port, we break down the usage of that money to be used at
Yes.
the port. They give us so much money to use for the administration building, how much $1 million. Then when the management approached the board regarding F1 need to be repaired before the Coast Guard closed, then we have to use that bond money, some of that bond money, to expedite the repairment of the F1, because F1 is very crucial to the island of Guam.
But are you aware that you've fallen below your required reserves?
Of course.
And what have you done about it? I mean, this happened
course,
during
you know,
your
if
this
we-
has happened during your tenure as the board chairman. I mean,
Yeah.
we made commitments that we would properly execute not just the expenditures of these funds, that we would properly manage the Port of Guam.
Yes, I understand that, Senator Brown. If we have to break the law, I don't think I'll be sitting in this place before you.
I'm going to ask you another question, Mr. Chair. I mean,
Yes.
I hope you reflect on this, because again, we met with bond investors in San Francisco,
Yes,
in Chicago,
Yes.
in Boston, in New York.
Yes.
We made these pledges and these obligations. At the time, the staffing pattern, Mr. Chair, of the Port Authority of Guam in 2018, and that was the last year that we worked together, we represented to the board that at the time, there were 351 employees at the port.
correct.
And the assessments that were made to determine our viability, the assessment determined that we were right-sized in terms of staffing capacity for the work. As you know, and you're very experienced, Mr. Chairman, you're almost within 50 years of your relationship with the Port of Guam, so you're very familiar with the operations out in the yard. There's
Correct.
only so many members of a gang that actually can load and unload. You only have 3 cranes.
Correct.
Since then, and again, I'm only going on 2021 figures. Those are the most recent audit numbers we have. Hopefully soon the 2022 will come out. But since then, in management, we had 116 employees in 2018. In 2021, we had an increase of 30 additional employees for a number of 146. In that same period of time, you've had less than 12 additional employees added to equipment maintenance, transportation services, stevedoring services, and facility maintenance. Why are we heavy on admin when they are non-generating revenue to the port? How did we increase by an additional 30 positions and then adding the board to approve additional positions that certainly in my assessment is unnecessary?
Yes, I understand that. I entrust, Senator Brown, I entrust the manager to see to it that the port must move forward. When they hire people, it's got to be on the staffing pattern. We do not create a new position, because if you have to create a new position, you have to go through the process. So if there's a vacant position, then if funds available, then we hire those positions. But we do not just hire any kind of people, Senator Brown, especially the operation. Let us be frank and let us be fair. Since I've been down at the port almost 50 years, I've been in different administration from Ricky Budalio time. I was down at the port. In every administration, there are changes. Before the port, when I went down there, we got 900 employees. We have security in every hole. But when the vessels start changing to containerized, then security went from 50 down to 20. So it is up to the manager to see to it, the manpower that we need to make sure that the cargo is being moved out in the port, especially to expedite how fast we have to move cargo, the very vital, very important cargo that must go out first for our people needs. That is the mission of the port, Senator Brown, you know that, is to move cargo, to discharge and to load, and to make sure that we have the equipment to be used for different type of operation. We need top lifter. How much is that? It's not a penny, not 1,000. Gantry, we're looking forward to acquire another new gantry because our old gantry are getting already old. And I asked also the managers to start looking at the new gantry because we're going to have a large vessel coming into Guam during the build-up. Instead of 5 row, maybe they go up to 6 row. But our gantry now, right now, they cannot be used for 6 row, only 5.
I know, Mr. Chairman, we represented to the bond investors that by 2027 we would acquire in Ukraine, so I hope that's been facilitated. I have one more question to ask before I go to Mr. Baza, and this is the most recent issue concerning storage at the Port Authority of Guam. It was reported in October of last year by your general manager to the port that the port would allow the storage of GPA. I assume these are all the parts for the new power plant. And it was relayed to the board that this was for the greater good of the community, that the port would not assess charges, storage charges on the Guam Power Authority.
I cannot answer that, Senator Brown, because I was so filing for medical.
Okay. Are you aware whether or not the Port Authority Board ever authorized the waiving of these fees?
I don't know. I was not here.
Do you know if the Port Authority Board has the authority to even waive fees?
Of course, if the management report that issue to the board, then the board will have to sit down and also ask our legal counsel for the opinion. Then if all the board agree, then we have to approve or disapprove.
There are several reasons the port can waive fees. One, if we don't have the equipment to move the cargo, or an act of God in the event we have a typhoon or something of that nature that prohibits the port from being able to move cargo for a customer. But are you aware that the Port Authority or the general manager or even the board has the authority to waive fees of these storage fees of this nature when none of those issues are factors?
I believe we have the equipment now to move any cargo at this time. Before, when our top lifter are down, then we have to acquire one. Then, of course, the expedite of cargo are slow, not as fast as now.
Mr. Chairman, are you aware, according to this report here, that $3.5 to $4 million supposedly may have been waived?
I don't know. I never see that Joanne Brown. It never come to me.
And
of course, the manager will make that request to the board. As a chairman of the board, I just make a recommendation for the other fellow board member to approve.
And your general manager has never discussed this matter with you, even upon your return?
No, because I'm out already because my term is expired already, I believe October.
Do you think that the PUC may have an issue since they set your rates? Because I'm not aware of any legal authority that will allow any general manager or board to waive these fees.
Of course, before we raise any kind of fee, they have to go to CGU for approval.
I understand, but are you aware that they may or have waived, that your general manager may have waived these fees?
I was unaware of that, Senator.
I appreciate you responding, and I know I have other colleagues here that have questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for responding.
Thank you so much, Senator.
Mr. Baza, you just relayed you had been on the Civil Service Commission until December, prior to you taking over as Deputy General Manager, Finance and Administration, so within a month or so?
Yes, I resigned in December, and then I took over as Deputy General Manager on December 13.
And then when you ended, you just ended in December of 2022, you retired again?
Yes, Senator.
Do you think there should be a cooling off period from the time you've served as Deputy General Manager to serving on the board?
I don't think there's anything in the law that says I can't come back. I retired because I had some health problems, so that's why I went to the Philippines, and then LSG guys have called me back to do consulting work, and that's what I'm doing right now.
Well, the reason I ask is those of us that are in positions of leadership, including heads of agencies, are kind of prohibited within a year, within a 12-month period of coming back and assuming any position that we might have had jurisdiction over. You're kind of reversed because you've served as the Deputy of Finance and Administration. I mean, even us, oversight chairs, for example, if I was the oversight chair of the port, I couldn't take a job at the port within 12 months of stepping down from the legislature.
I believe that's probably for the agency head, not the deputy.
You don't think that applies to you in your position of admin and finance?
I didn't think so.
You don't?
I didn't think so.
An appointed position?
No, it's a deputy general manager
You don't think so? There's no conflict there?
I don't think so.
You don't think overseeing what you did a few months ago, there's no issue there with you having policy oversight? Or even in the, directing the general manager that was so recently your boss, now your subordinate?
I have no problem directing my general manager if I was a policy person. I have no problems. Even as deputy general manager, I'll confront issues with him if I feel that it's not right, But for the most part, we've been going the direction that we want to go.
You also, when you came on board, facilitated these, I don't know what other questions, and Senator Fisher, I'll defer to him, but you were involved in the settlement agreements of the Pt.1.
Yes, I was.
I want to ask you, because you mentioned you did not preside over port cases because of your conflict with Mr. Phillips. Is that the case?
That's correct.
You never presided at the Civil Service Commission on any port cases. Is that what you're telling the legislature?
Not on any port cases, but on the Pt.7, because it was two of the lawyers for these employees felt that I should recuse myself, and the commissioners didn't want me to recuse myself, but in the spirit of making sure that there's no issues and no one's gonna complain that, hey, there's a conflict here, or there's Mr. Baza knows Mike Phillips, or it might come up.
You never, I'm just wanting to clarify, you never ever sat on any of these port cases?
I never.
Never even the Pt.7?
In the Pt.7, I recused myself, ma'am.
From the very beginning?
Yes, ma'am. And you can check for the record.
Oh, I was there, so, I just want to verify. But you did sit on a number of other cases.
A number of other cases.
Yes.
But if
Did you settle any of those cases that you sat on the Civil Service Commission with?
man, I know I heard some port cases, but I'm just,
You don't recall?
I don't recall all of the cases, ma'am. I'm sorry, Senator.
So you don't believe you may have been involved in any settlements, Kevin Siswico?
I don't believe I was
Mr.
involved in the
Castro, the
Kevin
police
Siswico.
officer that you
Mr.
said,
Castro,
we should demote
Mr.
Mr. Castro to being an unarmed security guard.
Mr.
You didn't
Castro,
do
I
any
was.
settlement on Mr.
Mr. Castro, I was.
Did you do any settlement agreements on Mr. Castro?
We did.
Did you do any settlement agreements on Kevin Siswico, who the Civil Service Commission unanimously determined to nullify their hiring because he and three other employees, the Civil Service Commission did an assessment and determined that these individuals were unqualified to have even been hired for the positions that they were serving in?
I heard about Kevin Siswico, but I don't believe I was
Did
involved.
you sit in a settlement of his case?
No, I don't believe I got involved in that
You don't
settlement.
believe you sat there and voted on to nullify his hiring?
Again, I'm sorry. There's so
You don't
many cases.
recall?
I don't recall. There's so many cases I've heard. I'm sorry.
Have you, Mr. Baza, ever, in your capacity, ever called in a rank-and-file employee that's classified at the Port Authority of Guam and ever asked them or told them who to vote for and who to not vote for in the election?
Oh, no.
Absolutely not,
Absolutely
Mr. Baza.
not. Absolutely
No, never.
not. I'll never compromise something like that.
Because certainly having served on the Civil
absolutely
Service
not.
Commission, violations of the Mini-Hatch Act would not be acceptable, would it?
I have not.
Never.
I have not.
Never an employee at the
Never.
Port
You
Authority.
can check my record.
Well, I don't know about your record, but,
Well,
I've
I
had
never.
employees come in, and I'm not the only senator that these employees have approached with this information. So on the record, officially, you are saying you have never once called a rank-and-file employee at the Port Authority of Guam and ever told them who to vote for or not to vote for in an election.
You've asked and I've answered the question.
Well, I just want to make sure we're
I
clear,
have.
because I want to make
And
sure
I'm under oath here.
and the people of Guam
Sure.
are also clear on
Sure.
that, Mr. Baza, because
I'm already saying it.
it would be very disappointing to even imagine that someone in your capacity, with your history, the Civil Service Commission, that has sat in judgment of so many people that determine their work, and in some cases their ability to continue to work, that it would be hard to imagine that someone in your capacity would ever do that.
Absolutely.
I just want to make sure for the record we're clear that you're
We're
saying you
very
never
clear.
have done that.
I'm very clear. Thank you very much. I'm very clear.
And if you're put under oath, you're willing to say the
course.
same thing?
Of course. I will. And I'm sorry if I sound a little harsh. Senator Telotaitigui said I'm a little bit harsh. Maybe it's the microphone.
One other question. You think you had no conflict in settling these Pt.7 cases? I mean, if you had a conflict sitting on the Civil Service Commission presiding over them, what would make you think automatically, if you had a conflict, that you would be directly involved in settling them?
I think, Senator, I think I've already answered that question.
Well, I'm asking because that's a pretty big thing when you're
It's a
paying
big
out
thing,
millions
but-
and millions of dollars of port money. And my understanding is your predecessor, Ms. Connie Shinohara, because I understand public statements were made by your general manager when she came on board at the beginning of the term that it would be Mrs. Shinohara as the deputy for finance and administration that would review these cases and determine the legitimacy of them. And my understanding, at least, and I've never spoken to Ms. Shinohara personally in my life under oath, I will state that. But I don't believe Ms. Shinohara ever settled any of these cases. I don't believe the cases ever moved, and I think there were people that were very dissatisfied with the fact she wasn't moving these cases. She started getting targeted. She started being the focus of gossip and social media, that she was shredding documents. But and then all of a sudden, Ms. Shinohara suddenly steps down from the Port Authority, and you never thought any reason in your capacity as to why the governor would pick you out of everybody in all of Guam, would pick the seated chairman of the Civil Service Commission to come down to the Port Authority?
Well, maybe
Did you think it was your lucky day, or what?
No, maybe I should state it for the record. It was her that recommended me.
And you didn't question, you didn't think there would be a conflict knowing the controversies of these issues at the Port Authority?
I didn't think so.
You didn't think so?
No.
And did you settle all these cases with legal counsel?
I've talked to our legal counsel on
Did you
it.
settle all these cases with legal counsel? Who wrote these settlements?
Yes.
And who is the legal counsel?
The counsels for the employees.
You wrote the legal, and who was the counsel for the port?
For civil service cases, I'm the one.
Are you telling the Guam legislature that you settled several $1 million worth of cases that did not complete the legal process without legal counsel protecting the interests of the port?
For civil service cases, I can settle.
And what makes you think that without legal counsel?
Because I see that there's a violation of law, and because the 60-day rule has been violated, Senator, because the 60-day rule has been violated, when management you should have known was 63 days, ma'am. You're fighting something, you're beating a dead horse in actuality. You know, the law is if you knew or should have known, and it's beyond 60 days, you're barred. And I found that it was barred. And then Eric Miller, who's legal counsel, came out with, legal counsel for the commission, came out with an ALJ report that on the Bernadette Stern Mano case, it went 63 days. And then on the Javalosa, it went on the 63 days. They're following the same pattern. So,
excuse me, but none of those individuals represent the port. Who is your legal counsel for the port?
I was the one that actually served this. Well, McDonald started it.
Well, Mr. McDonald was there for a very short period of time, and even he suddenly left. Even I got to wonder why Mr. McDonald all of a sudden, because he met with me and Mr. Phillips less than 2 weeks prior to his request, discussing these cases, and all of a sudden, again, he suddenly resigns. So you're telling the Guam legislature and the people of Guam that you unilaterally settled this without legal counsel on these cases?
I had discussion with legal counsel on this.
Who drafted these settlements? Who wrote these settlement agreements?
With the assistance of Mike McDonald before he left.
Did Mr. McDonald write all these settlements?
Some of them.
And then who wrote the rest of them?
I did. And I presented before the board. I had a board meeting and I presented before the board.
You're telling us that ethically you could not, because of 2 attorneys did not want you to sit as chairman of the Civil Service Commission over these cases, and yet when you went to the port, you determined that you could settle these cases.
Yes, Senator, yes. Because I recused myself then.
I don't have any further questions at this moment. I'll wait for the next round, Madam Chair.
Senator Blas, followed by Senator Barnett.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for being here today. I really hate to apologize, but I need to go ahead and continue on with these line of questionings. But first, Mr. Santos, I see at your packet that you have actually served, and thank you very much, your level of service to not just the Port Authority, but for the maritime industry for a prolonged period of time, and that you actually served as a member of the board in the previous administration?
Yes.
What was your capacity there?
Yes, I was appointed by former Governor Eddie Cabo.
And your position on the board, did you hold a supervisor?
I was appointed by that time as chairman for the board.
Chairman of the
At the
board.
Port Authority.
So you served the chairman of the board,
2012.
okay. And then you were asked to are you currently with the board right now?
I'm healthy as you are, Senator.
Pardon me?
Thanks to God that I'm still alive and still healthy.
But are you currently with the board right now?
Oh, yes.
You're still with the board?
Of course. Most I would say. Repeat that again, Senator. Huh? Not at this time because my term expires, so that's I'm here this afternoon to ask for confirmation once again.
Okay, so you have not been with the board since June of last year? Is that what it is?
Correct.
Okay, and so you've been asked to come back. Let me ask you a simple question here. What is the difference? What have you found is in the difference between when you served the chairman of the board in the previous administration to being a member of the board in this administration? You said that administrations and in change of administrations, there's change in policy at some times. What have you seen in as far as a change?
There's a change whenever the administration come in and the other one is going out. There's a new management. Of course, then you see new employees coming into the port.
Okay, but what has changed?
There's no change in the port. You put people down there, you can put any manager down there in the port just to manage the port, and our people will take good care of the port. So they are knowledgeable.
So am I led to then understand that as the chairman of the board, as a member of the board, that your responsibility is to the functioning of in this case, the Port Authority of Guam, and that a lot of these functions are absent and clear of any orders or mandates from, in this case, the governor of Guam?
Of course, any policy that have to be made up, they have to go to the board. And management, when they make that recommendation to us, then 5 of us will sit down and discuss on that matter.
Okay.
We check with our legal counsel to make sure that everything is clear.
And it's interesting because I think that if you can just very clearly see and hear over the last basically hour, and as far as the line of questioning, it was the board's decision in the previous administration to continue on with certain lawsuits. And then in a change of administration, then there was there was desire and the need to be able to now settle these lawsuits or settle these concerns.
Okay, when the new administration came in, there's a change regarding that issue, that legal matter. Then we have our legal counsel always giving us advice and recommendation what the board can do regarding those cases. Once the legal counsel make their recommendations for us to approve or disapprove, then we must rely on our legal counsel.
Okay, were you the chairman of the board at the end of the last administration?
Yes.
Were you the chairman of the board at the beginning of this administration?
Yes.
So you're telling me that in the last administration, where it was basically the sentiments of the board at that point in time to continue fighting the number of different legal cases that it had before them, that then there was a change, almost automatic, by the board, more specifically the board that was run under you.
The only time the board make any changes when our legal counsel give recommendation to the board that this is the decision of the legal counsel in finding the different cases and submit it to the board for approval or disapproval.
Didn't you question in as far as the change? I recognize, no offense to attorneys, but depending
the only
on
question that I asked legal counsel, do you check this thing out truly? And he said, yes. We found all the documents, the papers, and all those things. Then when they submitted to the board, then all the other 4 board members agree, then we have to approve.
Was that, I guess, the direction that you as the chairman of the board gave to legal counsel to basically go back and find ways not to do this?
There's one that we told them to go back and recheck it again, some of the case. But once the legal counsel come back, said to the board and say, we have to make sure that this case, we are not going to win, we're going to lose this case. So in that case, then the board will make that decision.
As the chairman of the board at that time, did you question the legal counsel as to why his advice or why his opinion on certain matters differed from your previous legal counsel?
The only question that I asked, Senator, to the legal counsel, why is this case taking so long? You know, imagine how many years since that case regarding the issue on the Port Authority of Guam. Then when the new administration come in, there's a new legal counsel and start making again report to the board after they went to the court, and they come back and said, well, I think we're going to lose this case because the 60 days notice and all those things. And I said, what is the recommendation? And recommendation said we have to pay. Then I asked the board members. And when the board members approved, remember, Senator, I just make recommendation and the other board will make the approval.
Okay. Let's look into the future. What are your future plans with regard to the board?
Repeat again, sir?
What are your future plans? Let's say
the future plan, I'm telling you right now, it is a bright future for the port.
It's a bright future for everybody, but I want to know specifically, what are your future plans for the board?
I know it's a bright future. Our employees are happy. Of course, there's a few that is not happy. You know, we have different projects that is ongoing on the port. And I believe we have all the equipment that we can handle any vessel that can come in the port. We give the tools to our employees. And I always talk to the employees when we ever had a meeting. And I always mention to the employee, take good care of the port, and the port will take care of you.
Okay. Well, last question for you, Mr. Santos. So who was your legal counsel in the last administration?
McDonald.
McDonald?
Yes.
In the Cabo administration?
No. That's Mike Phillips.
Mike Phillips. And who's your legal counsel when you entered the board during the...
Angel McDonald was appointed for legal counsel.
And who's your legal counsel now?
That's Jennifer. What's his name? Okay, Jimmy Canton. Jennifer.
You have two. Jamie Canton, and who's the other one?
Jennifer.
Okay, who does the legal counsel answer to you or to the management?
The legal counsel report directly to the general manager.
They report directly to the general manager?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That may be... Mr. Baza, thank you for... Mr. Baza, I apologize. I don't mean to... It's not a matter of flogging or beating a dead horse, but I need to ask a certain question here because I'm a little bit concerned here. That when you left the Civil Service Commission, what was your title at the Civil Service Commission?
I was the chairman.
You was the chairman. You were chairman of the board. And as the chairman of the board, is it your responsibility to be able to keep on top of all cases that go before the civil service?
I presided all of the cases.
Okay, so
when the case is active, I have to be on top of it.
Okay.
But when the case is closed, there's other cases that I have to be on top of.
Understood. So in the case of what was before you with the port, and you said that you had to recuse yourself, and you recused yourself because of your relationships with the other attorneys. Is that correct?
On the Port 7.
On the Port 7. Okay. What about other cases that were before the civil service, but were involving other port employees?
I remember sitting a long time on the Castro case.
Okay.
I remember sitting a long time.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about
But the rest, I'm not.
Okay, and I understand. Okay, I'm not okay. With regards to it, and sometimes the questions come before you, and it has to jog our memories. And I know that our memories go every time our hair gets gray. Okay, so I understand that. But along those lines, There's a little, I just found it a little, I'll be honest, disturbing with regard to while you recused yourself from the civil service side in being able to participate in the decisions, deliberations, Port 7, yet you found it necessary, if you will, to be able to construct the settlements for several of them?
Okay, so how that started is that, I reviewed these cases, and then we were going to, we're moving at the same pace. But then here comes Civil Service Legal Counsel that came off an ALJ report. And the ALJ report said that the Port Authority violated the 60-day rule by 3 days. Okay, that's on one case. And then same thing on another case on the Port 7 that said the same thing. So they're following the same pattern. And the way I see it, 60-day rule, that's the law. And when you go beyond 60 days, where management you should have known, you're barred.
It's interesting. I appreciate that. It's interesting because then, is it then fair assumption that the violation of the 60-day rule actually happened when you were the chairman of the Civil Service Commission?
I didn't know because I recused myself.
I thought you said earlier that you were on top of every case that went in front of civil service.
I'm on top of the case when it's active. But when it's done, I'm not going to be thinking about that case anymore.
But I think it was active past the 63-day rule, if that was the case, wasn't it?
Yeah, but see, the thing is I recused myself. I wouldn't know.
But again, it goes against to what you had said earlier, and I purposely said I asked that question initially. You said as the chairman of the Civil Service Commission, you stayed on top of every case.
Okay, so again, let me just.
I understand you may not have participated in the case, but it was your responsibility as chairman to stay on top of every case. And if that was the case, the 63-day rule, the 60-day rule was in fact violated when you were the chairman of the board, weren't you?
I guess I need to talk to my vice chairman because he's the one that handled the case.
Okay, well, and so, there is, I'm just trying to piece that together, and, I don't want to, something for us to think about. But then along those lines too, and you said you were the one who actually wrote up the settlement agreements, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Who normally would write up settlement agreements in this?
The lawyers.
The lawyers. Do you have a Juris Doctorate degree?
No, I don't.
Okay, so something that should normally be written up by an attorney, you took it upon yourself to write it up.
But I followed the same format that Attorney McDonald
and see what I'm
did.
getting at is
But in Civil Service Commission cases,
it surely appears that it's
in
while
Civil
it's
Service
good
Commission
for the
cases,
for the goose is not good for the gander here.
yeah, but in Civil Service Commission case, you don't need to have a lawyer.
I understand as far as civil service case. I'm saying that, no? Okay, that was something that you were a part of before. Now I'm talking about the time that you wrote up the settlement agreement. When you wrote up the settlement agreement, what position were you
I was the deputy general manager.
Okay, but in your general manager position, is that normally a responsibility that you would partake in? Or would you leave that to the legal counsel?
It would be a lawyer, but we didn't have a lawyer then.
Who? Why not? Why didn't you have a lawyer?
Because he resigned.
Okay, but then it's something as important as this so that you can cross your T's and dot your I's when you think that it was something that... Okay, I just appreciate that. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Barnett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Lafayette, good morning, or good afternoon. Hi, Mr. Baza. I don't want to make you upset, but I did want to also kind of continue on the questioning. Are you good?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So, the lawyer, the attorney for the port would normally draw up the settlements for these types of cases?
Yes, they do.
And you didn't have an attorney at that time, so...
The attorney wrote 2 of the cases. So what I did is I followed that case, and then, of course, I verified it with the employee's lawyer, and we agreed.
That was at the direction of who?
Well, when I went to the board, I told the board that I can settle, and they agreed that I could settle the cases.
So were these settlements made public?
Yes, sir. It was open to the public. In fact, Mr. Respicio here said, should we get an administrative person so that we can do it, executive session? And I said, why? Why open it to the public? So we did. It was recorded, and we deliberated. I made a presentation about what I found, and the board ratified it.
And you disagreed with the public auditor's findings?
Yeah, we did. We disagreed with some of the findings because some of the findings, almost most of the findings, is basically following the Department of Administration rules and regulations, and we have our own rules and regulations that is different from DOA, or it's different from DOA.
So you believe the public auditor's audit was flawed?
I'm not going to say it's flawed, but we went on ahead and agreed to disagree.
So you think he was just looking at the wrong rules and regs?
We believe so, and we've told them that. We've told the investigator that. As a matter of fact, Senator Barnett, when we submitted our findings, when we had our 3-hour discussions with them, everything that we justified to them, they didn't even listen to it. They went on ahead and just whatever we discussed just went into, it wasn't taken into consideration, for lack of better words.
I thought it was just a little interesting that you said there was no conflict in being the chairman of the Civil Service Commission and then going over to the port and settling these cases that you recused yourself from?
Yeah, I didn't think I had a conflict, Senator. Like I said, from the Port 7, I didn't preside it. I didn't look at it. And when that's why I had to read the report. I had to read, from this thick report for every single case. And then, I understand that the Civil Service Commission legal counsel was doing an AOJ report. And his AOJ report showed that we violated 60 days. And then that's one case. And then when it came to another case, I mentioned it to the board that we are violating the 60-day rule. And it's consistently going that direction. And if we continue to go that direction, the liability is going to be higher and higher and higher. And that's why we settled, so that we can at least find some savings. Because
what was it about Senator Fisher's line of questioning that upset you, sir?
Well, I thought I answered the question. I'm sorry, I thought I answered the question, and that's what I thought. And that's why I said, hey, I answered the question. I'm sorry, if I sound harsh, I apologize.
I think the word they used was hostile.
Well, if I sounded hostile, I'm sorry. Maybe that's why I had to move the microphone backwards.
So again, you don't think there was a conflict as an instructor of the ethics course?
Yeah,
I mean, I just sat in it a couple weeks ago. Are you confident that all of your actions would hold up?
I am, and I'm hold from an ethical standpoint. My whole philosophy is my integrity and my credibility, and my belief in the merit system. And I'll continue to say that.
Right. But you do understand where we're coming from, right? We don't get the opportunity to ask a lot of these questions, and we want to make sure that the people that we're going to confirm that sit on this board or any board can exercise good judgment and wise stewardship of the people's hard-earned tax dollars, or the port fees and whatnot. So you understand where we're coming from?
Wholly understand.
Okay. So there's been a lot of conversation. I'm going to switch gears here a little bit about the pay increase, the 22% pay increase, and a lot of the rhetoric surrounding that was that the line agencies have to compete with the autonomous agencies, because the autonomous agencies, they just pay their employees whatever they want, right? I mean, some would argue the salaries are a little luxurious. But I wanted to just get your opinion on just that whole thing, is that we have, because of the amount of money that the port or other autonomous agencies pay their employees, we're stuck here in the legislature having to give everyone these huge pay increases just to compete with you guys.
Well, a brief history, Commissioner Barnett. In 2008, I don't want to say who senator, they cut the arms and legs of Civil Service Commission. Once upon a time, the commission created the Hayes study to unified pay structure for the whole government of Guam. In 2008, the legislature cut that authority that gave the autonomous agent and everybody else carte blanche to change their pay policy. And because they changed, because we never believed then that government of Guam employees should compete amongst each other. You know, we always believe in when you're an AA, you're an administrative assistant, you're an administrative assistant, no matter how you slice that cake. But when it became their autonomous, then Port Authority, GPA, GWA, GURA, some other agencies, they had their own, they went ahead and contracted their pay posture out to Alan Sherrill, and then Alan Sherrill did a market value, and that's why we are, the Port Authorities on the percentile. Is it right that it's on the 25th percentile? I think so, because they're unique down there. Maybe not, the crane operators, those mechanics down there, the gantry operators, and they're unique, you know, and I think they deserve, you know, a higher pay than other government agencies. The 22% out there that has been recommended, is it sound? I think there's a lag. The last time that they did a study was in 2014. That was a 2010 data. So 18%, 22%, there's still a government lag.
Yeah, but given that your salaries down there at the port are already so much higher than everyone else's, are you anticipating another pay increase for port employees, given that we have passed the general pay plan pay increase for everyone else?
Not to my knowledge, Senator.
Are you sure?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. You mentioned that the employees at the port are special. Who is the current procurement chief manager, whatever it's called?
We have an acting person. Her name is Annie Sablon.
Where's the
chief procurement manager is over at the GSA for training.
Right. How long has that training been going on?
We are just waiting for the chief procurement officer to let us know that she's ready to come back.
How long is the, what's the title of the individual again, sir?
Chief procurement officer. Or
how long is the port's chief procurement officer?
I think procurement manager. I'm sorry.
Something like. How long has the port's procurement manager been detailed to the General Services Agency for training?
Well, we detailed her over there. No, I'm sorry. It's a training assignment. Because her legal counsel saying that she lacks the training, so we gave her to Claudia, the CPO, and for her to let us know when the training is done.
Right.
So that we can.
So, sir, the question was, how long has this training been ongoing?
I think 2 years.
Are you sure?
I'm certain.
Yeah. So are you saying that this individual who was hired as the procurement manager of the port wasn't qualified when they were hired?
You know, I don't want to go there because that could be, it's a personal matter, and I don't want to get into that, because what if it becomes a personal matter?
Can you explain the circumstances? Are you aware of the circumstances of the transfer of this employee?
I am aware, because she's not able to actually perform the critical and essential function of just basic procurement work.
Oh, yeah. So she required in excess of 2 years of training?
She's a procurement manager, but man, I'm told that.
Has she taken all 4 of the modules?
She did.
You had taken
all 4 modules.
Right.
But I'm being told not even the
by who?
Rank and file, by the chief procurement officer.
Who are you being told this by?
By the chief procurement officer, that she's not even able to
Which
perform.
one? The one that's acting, or the one
Claudia.
you exiled to GSA?
Claudia is telling us that the lady that is working over there is not even able to perform the critical and essential function growing up. It's kind of like if you're a personal administrator, but you can't do a PS work.
So in other words, you're saying this individual isn't qualified, and
I wasn't there.
That's kind of what it sounded like you were saying.
It sounds that way.
Yeah. Have you ever, in your experience at the Civil Service Commission, witnessed a transfer that lasted, 2 years for training?
Yeah. Again,
a lot of cases.
It's not a transfer.
Yeah. What
It's
is
for
it?
training. And training can take a while.
Wow. So
It
how
all
much
depends on the
longer,
individual.
how much longer, sir, do you anticipate this training taking?
It all depends.
Yeah. Was this employee the victim of political persecution?
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No, I know it's not.
Which one? Do you know or you
No,
don't think
it's
so?
not political.
It's not?
No, it's not political. It's all performance-based.
Are there any other port employees who have been transferred to other agencies for training that maybe you didn't agree with their political philosophy?
Well, I don't think you can transfer like crane operators or something, but I don't think there's anybody.
Right. So there's only
my
one.
knowledge.
Well, there's only one employee in the entire Port Authority of Guam that has been transferred to GSA for. There's more.
No, that's the one I know,
Only one.
that I know.
Right. Well, and so then you're waiting for the Claudia Akfaji to tell you that this employee is leveled up enough for you
if
guys to take
she
it back.
completed her training and development program, then yeah,
What kind of training is this though?
to do procurement work.
But she's already had all 4 modules, this person?
She wasn't able to perform, even over there at GSA, I'm told she's not even able to perform the critical and essential functions
you-
of just the.
You follow up on the status of
Yeah,
this employee?
Yeah, I have to, we have to.
I know earlier you had said that you keep hearing about crystal meth coming into the port. Right. Can you explain what do you mean when you say you keep hearing about crystal
Well,
meth coming into the port?
You hear it out there. You hear the rumor that, hey, drugs are coming in from the port. And, when I first got there, I mentioned it to the GM. I'm saying, man, I keep hearing that from people out there that drugs are coming in from the port. Is drugs coming in from the port? He said, no, Robbie said, I don't think so. But, we open our doors to customs and quarantine, everybody else to be going in there and be doing their due diligence, We've given them carte blanche, actually, but me personally, sometimes.
What do you think personally, Mr. Baza?
When I go in by 5, I'm telling my boss I'm coming in at 2 in the morning, just to
Why?
take the car, because I want to see if there's really something going on down
But didn't
there.
your general manager say he didn't think so?
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. You sometimes say, "What are you doing going in there?" So I'm just on my own doing that.
I'm not sure if it's a rumor because we've had a couple of hearings in this very room, and we actually had the chief of customs had said on the record that, yeah, he believed that crystal meth was coming into the port and that we just weren't able to catch it coming in. Would you agree with that assessment?
I won't. I don't. But anything can happen. But I'll tell you, like I said, and I said it earlier, when we find out that there's a compromise in some of those containers, we stop operation immediately and we call everybody in. And that kind of slows our productivity down. But we changed our policy there just because we also care about if this is coming from the port, we got to catch it.
Right, yeah.
Are
you aware or are you suspicious of any port employees who may be involved in illicit drug smuggling into the port?
No, I'm not aware, sir.
Okay. Are you aware of any law enforcement being aware of that?
No, I'm not aware.
Because it was said down here on the floor too, and then we also had a briefing from the feds. It was HSI, and they had also shared with us that they believe that drugs are coming in through the port, but that there are employees who are associated with that, and that's why they're not able to infiltrate this drug smuggling operation. Are you aware of anything like that at all?
No, Senator, I'm sorry.
What would you make of that assessment? Would you agree with that?
I know Ike Pareto. I've talked to him, and I said, Ike, where's it coming from, man? We want to make sure too. I want to make sure too. We want to make sure that it's not coming from us. We don't want to cover anybody. Hey, if we catch it, we're going to take it, man. If I can take it myself, if the two of us can take it ourselves, we will.
Yeah.
Of course, that's probably not the right thing because we're not cops, but, we will do it. But according to Ike, it's not coming from the port.
I've interviewed Ike Pareto when I was at KUAM, and he actually said he thinks it's coming from the port.
Oh, then I'm sorry, then it's conflicting between the discussion you have.
I
with
mean, he
him.
might have changed his tune, though, lately. But when was to your knowledge, sir, has there ever been a significant drug bust at the port while you were the deputy general manager?
No. I just did it on my own.
So you're not aware of any significant drug bust involving a seizure of crystal methamphetamine at the Port Authority of Guam during your tenure as the Deputy General Manager of Admin and Finance?
Man, I'll tell you, if I knew about something like that, we would have tackled it.
Yeah.
Honest.
So there hasn't been one?
No.
No.
'Cause if
So
I
do
knew
you,
about
do you
it,
think
we
that
would-
means that it's not coming in through the port? Or
That's-
do you think that we're just not catching
Well,
it?
that's what I think, because we haven't identified. I'll tell you what, though, Senator, if we identify it and we catch it, man, we're going to rock it. Because, methamphetamine is even our own children.
Yeah.
So that's how serious we are about drugs coming
Got to
in.
be serious. And when law enforcement
Exactly.
comes into the people's house here at the Guam Congress Hall and they tell us on the record that they believe it's coming in through the port, then guess what? I'm probably going to believe them.
Well, I work down there, so, I'm not the operations guy, but I work closely with Dominic, and, we also kind of do our thing, and we know already that we don't see any suspicious activity down there, honestly. That's our take, my take. Because like I said, Senator, if we see some suspicious activity, we will rock it, man. And maybe people are coming in here saying it's coming from the port. Yeah, that's not what we're seeing.
Well, I mean, it's just what every single law enforcement person says. It comes in through the ports of entry, right? And that's only the airport, the post office,
Or the port.
and the Port Authority of Guam.
Of course.
Right? Yeah. How about you, Mr. Santos? Do you think there's drugs coming in through the port and you guys are just not catching it?
I believe they are coming inside the port, but let me just brief you regarding our operation on cargo. Once a container vessel come in port, and when we discharge that container, they check the seal. When that seal is broken, they set that container aside and also notify the custom. When the seal is broken, then that container will go outside, and it's up now to the custom when the container go outside. Whether they open the container outside, that is not the jurisdiction of the port anywhere. Right. But of course, I believe that drug coming inside the port. Because cargo coming in the port, they're inside the container, but the port has no jurisdiction inside that container. Once that seal is locked, no one will open that. Once they go out, before they open that seal, the custom will be there to make sure that the seal will be broken, then they open the container.
Right. And that's in the event a seal is broken, right?
Yes.
But what if I was one of these, like, these drug kingpins you see in the movies? They're like pretty smart. And let's say I had someone in the States and they buy a car or something and they stuff it full of meth and then they put it in the container and the seal is not broken.
Of course, Senator, this is my overview. The drug people are very smart, very intelligent. Yeah. They know that it's very hard for drugs to come inside the port. Their solution now is just put on a fishing vessel, let the fishing vessel pass by Guam, drop the cargo, another boat will go out and pick up those cargo. They can go in Agana Marina or Aga Marina, and nobody will notice that.
So you believe drugs are coming in through the port?
I believe that it's coming. Of course, they're coming into the port because most of the cargo are coming in the port. What inside that container, we don't know.
Did you ever share that with your general manager?
I never do. I sit down with the captain of the port. We discuss regarding that and also the Navy. Regarding those unauthorized vessels that pass by Guam, of course, they can drop anything down in the water and somebody will go out and just pick that thing up. We don't know that.
Did you share your opinion on drugs coming in through the port with Mr. Baza?
No, before, Senator, maybe in the 70s when we have a break bulk cargo, we have a lot of drugs coming in. because, boxes is open. We didn't even know it. And once they discharge it, they go to the warehouse. We don't know what will happen inside the warehouse. But now we, everything is coming in containerized.
Are you aware of the situation with the procurement manager, the real one?
Oh, the procurement manager, that is management jurisdiction. That is not the board. You see, the general manager will not ask the board, they're going to send this employee for training. That's not the board function. That is manager.
Thank you, sir. Do you believe the board has an oversight authority or, check and balance role in terms of check and balancing the management?
Maybe I could sit down and talk to the manager. What is the delay? What is the status of these employees? Why it's taking so long to be trained? If you cannot train, what action are you going to take?
It kind of seems like they just banished this employee over to GSA. I mean, it's been over 2 years, right? I mean, what would you think, sir?
I don't know. Even a dumb dog, you can train more than 2 years, and they'll learn new tricks. Really, training is very vital to the port, especially when it comes to the procurement.
Right.
We're dealing with millions and millions of dollars. Yeah. One wrong issue, then will be a big problem for the port.
Are you excited for the opportunity to serve on the port board again?
I'm very, I spent most of my life down at the port, Senator. I spent down there 47 years.
With all due respect, sir, you don't think it's time to step aside and maybe let the young blood come in?
Of course, I give everybody a chance, even when I was port employees, when I was harbor master, for 36 years. There are so many applications, for harbor master, and really that job is not, you can go outside downtown and pick anybody up. That is very critical position. You need more training. You have to know the rules of the roads, A2 navigation, ships handling, all those things. So again, I want the port employees to be given the opportunity to advance. For me now, I love the port. I want to die down at the port. I served the people of Guam for many, many years, and I'm very proud of it. I offer my service to the port. If I know that I cannot serve anymore, that is the time that I will step down.
Please don't die down at the port, sir.
Okay.
Just for the record, please. What about the salaries? Are you guys planning any increase now because it's a lot of, for lack of a better term, Carabao see, Carabao do?
No, the manager will decide that for the port employees'
What's
salary.
your opinion on it, though, Mr. Santos?
If the employee deserves pay raise, of course, I will support that. But the port will not micromanage and telling the manager, go ahead and give pay increase to the employees. No.
No, I understand that, sir. I understand. But where I think I'm coming from is that the rest of the government of Guam is trying to keep up with your runaway train salaries. And so you guys raise up the pay of everybody. You got the GM making $2 million an hour. And then, the rest of the government of Guam looks at us and says, hey, we got to pay people. Because I don't even think we're competing necessarily with the federal government. It seems like we're competing with ourselves. So just what is your opinion on that? Because it's a lot of reaction. You guys pay so much that we got to go pay everyone, and then you guys raise up again, and then we got to go pay everyone.
Senator, since I've been down there, the port, management never go to the board and ask to give pay raise to the employees. There is a procedure that they must follow. The increment. And when that increment, evaluation, then that will be the time for the employees to get that pay.
So in your opinion, again, sir, do you think that it's time for the port employees to receive an increase across the board?
You cannot satisfy everybody. You increase pay, let's say $10 today. Tomorrow they're asking for another $10. You cannot satisfy the employee. When we give pay raise to the employees, that means they deserve the pay raise. There is an evaluation. If they don't meet that evaluation, of course, they don't get paid.
How would you characterize your relationship with the general manager?
If my relationship with the manager is we don't get along, he will not be sitting beside me. We have to have a good working relationship.
Right.
I put my complete trust on him to take care of the employee. And I always remind him, be a good listener, take good care of our employee. They are the great asset for the port.
Thank you, Mr. Santos. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator Barnett. We'll now move on to the second round of questions. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you wanted to end everything. You want to do 2 rounds? Okay. Second round, you want to be at the very end, or you want to be now? Okay. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Senator Paris, I didn't see you down there.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So good afternoon. I just want to follow up on some of the questions that were asked earlier. You know, I'm very concerned about the, you know, a lot of things. I guess maybe I could start with the accident that happened down in with the port, the death that occurred because of the, I guess the lack of heeding safety precautions. What is your plan as a board member to address this? This goes for both nominees. So we could start with Mr. Baza.
All right. We found out that it was an employee from GSY that got injured in our own workplace, and of course we want to make sure that I know San Francisco came out here to do the investigation because it's a death accident. We try not to get involved in the whole situation because this is between the contractor, our contractor, you know, which is GSY, that was actually taking down the crane, and you know the accident happened when they were moving the crane, and the operator hit the staff. So because this is my understanding now, there's an investigation that was done, and I'm not privy to the information for that. But you know, we don't want the family to also sue the port, you know, that we're negligent with what we're doing, because in our eyes, that's between you know, the company is the one that created that accident. But of course, we have to be compassionate to the family. You know, and we want to make sure that the family is okay with this. That's my understanding.
Okay, so one of the responsibilities of a board member is to review operational procedures. Is there anything that you can recommend as a board member? What would you recommend as a board member to improve upon the situation?
Well, certainly we will look at the safety requirements that our people have been trained, you know, to do their work out there. And if there's did we do something wrong, is the safety compromise, you know, when the accident happened. And if policies weren't adhered to, then we need to talk to the manager and fix, you know, try to strengthen the policy with respect to safety.
Okay, Mr. Santos, do you have a reply to that question?
Of course, we are concerned for the safety of our employee. That's why we always have training, safety training. We have safety officers, also have a meeting with our stevedoring in the operation. Before any vessel come in, they have a safety talk. What kind of cargo are they going to be discharged? What kind of equipment going to be used? And also the safety concern of our port employees.
But as it pertains to contractors, I mean, was there anything in the procurement specifications that required any kind of certification, any kind of safety certification from these contractors?
Of course, when a contractor have to do some business at the port, sometimes they have to submit their plan to the safety officers and see to it that they comply to that safety. And also for private sector, they always have a safety officer, project officers, also they got rigger. They are very knowledgeable of rigging any crane they have to demolish or the gantry. All of these things, they have to set a meeting before any operation will be done.
Okay, who was the safety officer?
Who is our safety officer? Our acting is Paul Salas.
Is he still current?
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Yes, Senator.
Okay. So what has the board done to review the safety of the port operations?
Whenever there is an incident, management will submit a report to the board. Then the board will sit down and discuss what remedy, how we can solve the solution from happening again. And most of the, I always inform the manager or remind the manager to always have a training or pep talk every day before any operation will be done at the port.
Okay. Yeah, I think it'd be good to provide the committee with what the board has done in response to this incident. If you can provide that, I'd appreciate that.
Anyway, when the manager submit any incident report, accident report to the board, then the board will respond to the general manager what remedy, what solution you have to do to stop this happening again.
Okay, the other question is, the board is also responsible for rates. Has the port ever raised their rates?
The rate for, clarify that thing to me, Senator.
So the rates that you charge shipping companies, for instance?
In other words, do we have a tariff? They have to comply or conform to the tariff of the port.
So is this primarily your revenue source
Oh, sure.
for the operations?
Yes.
Okay. And have you ever raised the tariffs?
How long ago?
No, not at this time.
Not at this administration.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm too seeing the latest staffing pattern. It's almost runaway pay raises. And I'm seeing the next salary increment is within this year for many of the employees. As board members, do you have any concern about the increasing, the increasing of salaries?
Not at this time.
So have you ever reviewed the evaluations that resulted in these pay raises?
I always mention to the manager that if we increase tariff, that means prices outside will be increased also, and people of Guam will also suffer.
So how are you affording these pay raises?
Pay raises, we just follow the pay status of the port. We have increment, evaluation, then give them pay. Not at one time.
Okay, so Mr. Baza, so I'm seeing these pay increases, revenues, from what I understand from Mr. Santos, that there wasn't an increase in tariffs. So how is the port being able to pay? How are they able to pay these increaes?
Well, I believe right now we have the ability to continue paying our employees based on salary increments. But in terms of port-wide pay increases, I don't believe we're doing that right now.
Sorry, say that again?
I don't believe that there's a port-wide increase, kind of like what happened with the 22% on the other side, for the government of Guam. I don't believe we're doing anything like that. And everything that we do is subject to funding availability anyhow.
So have you looked at the latest staffing pattern?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, because it shows there are a lot of increments happening. And it's not across the board, but quite a big percentage of the workers are getting increases. You've never seen that?
Well, classified employees get salary increments every year, based on performance, and you know, if they perform their duties and responsibilities and they meet the minimum requirements, yeah, they get their increments. It's not, we did not put a hold on that, and that's by law.
Okay, so it just doesn't add up, because where you're getting the money to pay for these increases, because they look pretty substantial.
Well, like I said, it's subject to the availability of funds, so, you know, it won't be granted if there's no funding.
Yeah, I'm just wondering where that money's coming from. Do you have any idea where that money's coming from to pay?
It's our budget. Because every year, when we do our budget, we look at increments as well.
Okay.
Yeah, straight line.
Maybe that's another question. Yeah, so I'm not satisfied with the responses. Okay, the other requirement or board responsibility is contracts. Has anybody in the board, how many of you have completed the 4 modules, procurement modules? Anybody on the board?
No, not for me.
So has the board ever engaged in any contracts?
No. Any contract, Senator, it is not the board, it will be the manager. Once the manager make a contract with any company, they make an RFP or something, then they'll submit to the board for approval.
Do you think it's necessary to take these modules as board members?
Personally, I don't think so, because, you know, these are the classified employees that are supposed to take the module, because they're the job matter expert. They're supposed to be the one to know the work.
Mr. Santos?
Yes, Senator.
Do you think it's necessary to take all 4 modules as a board member?
Of course, you know, it is very vital and very important, you know, especially any module that the board members will be, you know, to have more knowledge, more familiar. Of course, I go along with that.
Have you taken any modules or completed them?
No, not at this time.
All right, so one of the duties of the board member is to fix the compensation of the general manager. What is your, I guess, your opinion as far as compensation for the general manager? What is your intent? Do you think it should be increased? And what would your decision be based on?
Depend on the evaluation of for the general manager. Once the evaluation are submitted and you meet the standard for on that evaluation, then the board will get together and make recommendation for pay increase or not.
Okay, Mr. Baza?
I'm sorry, because I wasn't, I'm not a board member, but yes, of course, you know, if the general manager performs his or her duties and responsibilities in outstanding performance, I think he deserves an increment. He or she deserves an increment. But if I'm a board member, I'm going to ask to see the evaluation, you know, and it's going to be the board to really evaluate the general manager and the deputies. Oh, I'm sorry, the deputies is evaluated by the general manager, but the board decides on the general manager.
Okay. Do you think the board should enforce laws or ensure compliance with government laws?
I think we should. If we see that there's a violation of law, we need to enforce it. If we see that, you know, management is violating the law, it's our position to go in there and fix it and tell them that it's wrong.
Have you ever, Mr. Santos, your response?
My response to you, Senator, you know, when we have some kind of law or any rules and regulation have to adjust or to modify, of course, we want to take a look whether that thing will benefit the board or not. Then we board members will get together and we'll discuss this matter. Then if all of us agree, then we'll make that recommendation or to approve it.
Okay, there is one part of law that states, no employee shall be temporarily assigned or detailed to position, nor shall the employee assume the duties and responsibilities of a position other than the one to which he has been appointed for a period in excess of 90 days within a calendar year, unless the general manager obtains an exemption upon written application to Department of Administration. And such exemption should not extend beyond an additional 90 days within that calendar year. So, are you aware that the Port Authority is not complying with this statute?
Senator, that is the responsibility of the general manager to detail people to different agency or different department. That is not the board policy to assign some people for a detail or another assignment.
Okay, but that's statute. So you cannot go beyond 90 days, and or an extension of that would be another 90 days. So what you're saying is that you would defer to the GM's decision even though it goes outside of statute? Is that correct?
Of course, the port will be notified to that to extend, or we cannot change any policy. If there is a law that is violated, of course, then as a board members, then our legal counsel will come to us and tell us that we are violating the rules and regulations. Then we have to stop that.
Okay, because it is in violation of a law right now. So the Port Authority currently is in violation. Based on this.
Of course not, because if we violate, of course, our legal counsel will inform us. We don't want to be sued.
Okay, moving on to a lighter topic, interdiction. So in regards to interdiction of drugs, I mean, you've stated yourself that you believe that drugs are coming in the port. Has the port ever interdicted drugs? Has there been any instance, and what is the frequency of interdiction of drugs at the port?
Not that I'm unaware. In case any drugs that were coming in and somebody got caught bringing in drugs, of course the management will inform the board.
Mr. Baza.
Not to my understanding. I've never heard that, there's drug activities going on in the port or anything coming in from the port and we let it go. I don't believe so. Maybe that's the rumor out there, but I still don't believe so.
Do you believe that drugs are coming through the port?
I don't believe so. Because I'll tell you, as I said to Senator Barnett, if we see that there's an activity there, we will identify it and we will take it, because we all have children here and we all care.
Okay, thank you for your responses. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. We'll now have a very quick round, a second round of questioning, because we still have other items on the agenda. So colleagues, in the interest of time, please limit your questions to 2, please. If you have additional questions, Senator Fisher.
Thank you much. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just for the record, I would register my objection to this amended rules of order here.
Thank you, Senator Fisher. Noted.
Thank you very much. Let's see how long I can. I have been reflecting quite a bit on the settlements that were entered into, multi-million dollars in total, for the Port 7. You will use that, the Port 7, which of course was Francis Cepeda, Vivian Leon, Bernadette Stern, Leonardo Leon Guerrero, Josette Javalosa, Francine, I believe, Rocio, and a Mr. Joe Guevara. So I've been thinking quite a bit about that, and I know that the chair wants me to be brief, and I will do so. Well, I'll try. All right. In one of them, And all of these agreements, totally contrary to law, completely contrary to law, were labeled confidential settlement agreements between the port and these individuals. That's entirely illegal. We do not have secret settlements in the government of Guam, and we don't have secret settlements in the government of Guam's agencies. But nevertheless, for some reason, and these, of course, ma'am, these went out over Mr. Baza's signature, and he asked that they be kept secret. Ultimately, the port, of course, was unsuccessful in hiding these things. But so here's my first question. Ms. Frances Cepeda got $437,268.94 of taxpayer money in the settlement. And she also got, well, she didn't, but her lawyer got $87,453.78 in legal fees. The individual who got those legal fees, coincidentally enough, is the McDonald Law Firm, which is to say that you paid $87,453.78 to your own law firm. That's pretty mind-bending. I mean, the conflict is so extraordinary. And this person, the McDonald Law Office, billed you 437 hours, which amounts to 54 days of work, solid work, 8 hours a day. Tell me about your review, because you signed the settlement, and here's my first question. Tell me about your review of the billing sheets you received from Mr. McDonald.
Well, first off, Joe McDonald wasn't working for that law offices then. Secondly, I can't really discuss about the legal fee because I've been told by Chuck McDonald that that's private.
It's actually not private. It's public information. And the individual who received the windfall, your lawyer, is now telling you not to talk about it. I'll let the people of Guam decide what they think about that.
All right.
Vivian Leon received $296,082. $296,082. Her attorney, Mr. Ike Agagi, received $307,554 in legal fees. And in fact, Mr. Agagi, the lawyer, received more than the complainant, Ms. Leon. Now, this $307,545 that you gave to a lawyer equals, at $200 an hour, Mr. Agagi billed you approximately 1,537 hours of work, which amounts to 192 days at 8 hours a day. An absurd amount, we would all agree. But tell me about your review of the billing sheets that you received from Mr. Agagi. They are neither attorney-client privilege, you couldn't raise that anyway, nor are they private, they are public documents. And in fact, I have asked the general manager through a FOIA, which I just delivered to him, to provide those particular billing sheets. But I would like to know, when you reviewed Mr. Agagi's billing, asking for $307,545, what was your opinion of the billing?
Well, like I said, and you told me already I can't say that, but
no,
that's
I didn't tell you that at all. I didn't tell you that at all.
Well, okay, so
quite the opposite.
So I'm not going to discuss it because I'm told by legal counsel that that's private.
And that's the legal counsel that you gave $87,000 to.
Well,
I can assure you, sir, that these are not private. This is public money that you have expended and are unable to tell us what sort of research or looking into you did to try and save us just on these two cases. Just on two cases. To try and save us over $1 million. Yeah, what did you do?
I saved $1.5 million on that Vivian Leon case.
Is what?
I saved $1.5 million on that Vivian Leon case.
How so?
Yeah.
How so?
You know, remember, she retired.
Uh-huh.
She retired and she didn't, you know.
And she came back and then you ended up giving her $500,000, or am I getting this a little confused with another one of the port individuals? The chair has asked me not to ask any more questions, and I respect that. So thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Fisher. Senator Titagui.
Are we changing the rules now? Now we're down to only 2 questions on the second round?
I've asked that you please keep it to 2 questions. We still have other items on the agenda and a lot of folks
Well, I think
who are
this is
waiting.
very important, Madam Chair, especially when we have 2 gentlemen who's taken the time to come out here and wants to be confirmed for a board that's very critical to our island. I don't think we should limit it.
Noted. Thank you, Senator. Please state
So
your ask
that
your
being
questions.
said, Mr. Santos, half a day. It's
Senator.
It's always good to see you and your son. I saw him earlier. And I want to commend you for still wanting to serve on the board. You've served for over 10 years, almost 10 years, right?
That's correct.
Almost 10 years. And I had the opportunity, because I was mentioning earlier about how I read the reports from the OPA's office and several reports that came out. One of them in particular was the pay that was given to an individual who had retired. It was one of the Port 7 who had retired. And in those 3 years he had retired, he or she retired, when she came back, she was given time when she was gone, leave. But she technically was already retired, but when she came back, she was given retroactive pay from the time she retired until the time she came back to work for the port. It's very confusing. And then even the OPA report, former Speaker B.J. Cruz talked about this, and I haven't seen anything yet. I sent a letter to this Attorney General to follow up on these OPA reports, find out what went wrong, and why these have not really been addressed, these issues in this report, especially something like that. She retired, but yet when she came back, it was retroactive on the time she was gone. So I took the time to watch the board in action, see what's going on. I attended a couple of them. And, it was just concerning, Mr. Chair, because it's almost like whatever the GM told you to say, you were agreeing with. There was one part when it was whether to put out a resolution to go after the former GM, and you were actually you were not in agreement at the beginning, and then it was the GM that coached you along to agree to it. I mean, don't take my word for it. Everybody can watch the video. Everybody can watch it online. Go to the Port Authority of Guam, and you can watch that situation. So I saw that, and then I saw now, sitting here, him continuing to coach you by writing things on a pad, telling you what to say. It's concerning for me, Mr. Santos. I've known you for years. And, most people would, in their twilight, or getting up there, they would want to retire. You served almost 10 years. And it boggles me. Why do you want to continue to sit on this board if it looks like you're taking directions from the GM instead of having your own mind?
Senator, let me just respond to your question. Nobody is coaching me. I'll tell you the truth. No one is going to dictate me what to say and what not to say. I listen to my other fellow board members. Once they make a decision, they come to me and make a motion to approve and all those things. Then I make a motion for them to approve or not to approve. I do not vote. I just make the solution or resolution for them to approve or not to approve. And nobody is going to dictate me. I'll guarantee you, Senator, that I serve the people of Guam. I do not serve the governor alone. I don't serve no senator, no general manager. I serve the people of Guam. The people put me down at the port is to serve the people, to take care of the port, and I want to make sure that the port is well taken care. If I cannot handle the port, then I will resign.
Thank you for answering that. But, I've watched the board minutes, and it's all on video, so I beg to differ on that. Mr. Baza, I'm glad you've calmed down a little bit. No need to be hostile, just answer the questions. We're all here to listen to what you have to say. That's it. But I really appreciate some of the questions that you brought up, but it's just, answers that you gave us on some of the questions. And I want to go back to procurement, because I know that one of my senators talked about training. And someone who is in 2 years of training, that's quite a bit of time for taking that one person out and calling it training. Mr. Baza, my question to you is, if you become a board member, will you bring her back?
I would have to discuss that. The general manager needs to discuss it with the board, because it's not for.
Well, your personal vote.
I would have to look at her evaluation from the chief procurement officer. And if the chief procurement officer is saying she's ready to come back, then sure. If the chief procurement officer says she's ready to come back. If you're asking me my personal, if the chief procurement officer says she's ready, she's up to speed, she's good to go, then from my personal opinion, I say yes. But as a board, I'm going to have to discuss it with the general manager. What is their plan? But you're asking me my personal opinion? Absolutely. If she performs her critical and essential function of a procurement person, then sure.
Will you look into it, Mr. Baza?
I will look into it. If there's an evaluation that says yes, she can come back and perform the critical and essential functions of a procurement.
Okay. Well, you don't need the board to move on that. You can do it as an individual person and look at that. So I appreciate if you do, because we all know that this person should not have been there for 2 years, taken out, for political reasons or because they didn't vote for the right governor or what is ridiculous.
Madam Chair,
we all work for the. Mr. Respicio, please.
So
you're not here being
here.
confirmed,
You can't
Mr.
even see me.
Respicio.
You
You're not
don't
being
wanna
here
even
being
acknowledge,
confirmed.
and you
Okay,
can't
thank
even
you.
see me.
Okay, I understand. We'll move on. Thank you for your two
So
questions, Senator Tydegui.
Mr.
Senator
Baza,
Brown.
I appreciate it if you look into it, because 2 years is a long time. It should not be done political, and being on the board requires you to think for the people of Guam, not for who's going to help you at the board or who's going to help you at the port or what favors you're going to give in return for something. That's not what this is all about.
Thank you very much, Senator Tydegui. Senator Brown.
For the record, Madam Chair, I'm also going to voice my disappointment in you cutting off members of this body from asking questions. I understand it's long. I was here after 2 o'clock yesterday, and I was here till 7:30 last night because, we all had questions, and even the speaker didn't cut us off from asking questions, because that's the purpose of why we're here. I have all the time in the world to do this, and I'm disappointed that you continue to cut off questions on something so critically important, because, the day of reckoning is here. Mr. Chairman, one thing I had advised you, and it's not normally my place because you're my senior, but Mr. Chairman, we've had this conversation. I've always told you, sir, don't let anyone put you in a compromising situation. We've talked about that.
Yes, Senator, and I take that advice from you.
And because my interest, sir, in the time I've served you was also to always make sure that you were never put in a compromising situation.
Senator, I'm just one of the board. The other fellow board member, when they make the recommendation, then they're the one who's making that decision.
I understand, but you're the chairman of the board.
Of course, I cannot overrule
You're the
them.
chairman of your board, and your members look to you for direction, and you've had dissension from your board.
Correct.
You've even had appointees of this current administration that have vocally spoken out against the actions that even you have taken, sir. And I tell you, this pains me. You have no idea. This pains me that we are in this situation, unfortunately, because of really, drastic changes in the direction of accountability at the Port Authority. And I can say that having served. And I can only say that now because I'm sitting in a public position that the people have reelected me to. My level of disappointment. Because we wanted to make the port better, and now you're in a situation where you're 4 points below your debt ratio, which means you're expending far more than you're taking in, which now puts the bonds in jeopardy. And you know, Mr. Chairman, having been and met with these bond investors, they listen and watch everything. They watch the news, they read the paper. That's how they evaluate. They know so much about Guam, they knew so much about the Port Authority. And the questionable actions that have happened, I just don't say that because I've served in other capacities. But in this particular case, to see where we are today and the answers that have publicly been stated, some are disappointment, some unfortunately are not truthful. And for you, Mr. Baza, you've said publicly for the record, and we will pull the records of the Civil Service Commission, because I sat through many of those hearings at the Civil Service Commission. That's the most, I've never spent time in the Civil Service Commission until I was at the Port Authority of Guam. Even the issue of clear and convincing evidence that you evaluated these particular cases on, our counsel advised at every single hearing that you were using the wrong standard. And you continued to ignore him, and that ended up being challenged all the way up again to the Supreme Court of Guam, who determined that the Civil Service Commission, to which you chaired, was using the wrong standard. And you tell me I never sat in any of these port board hearings. I must have been imagining it, because I sat there many a night where you were sitting there as chairman. And you're claiming you never sat at a single Port 7 board meeting. That whole issue of clear and convincing was from you because you didn't listen. Maybe your memory is, you forgot. Maybe because you had so many cases, but my goodness, be truthful about it. That's the concern, to come before the people of Guam and lie about these things. And you to go and settle. Questionable actions. The last meeting I had with the governor of Guam, who I've served many terms in this very body with, was about the Port Authority of Guam, and she said, I don't support settlement. I said, well, Governor, I'm a little concerned because I'm hearing that's what your general manager's into. Very first board meeting, that was on the agenda. Not the priority of the Port Authority and what I need to know and learn. It's settling these cases, including YTK. That was always the agenda. And she said, no, I don't agree with settlement. She actually pointed out to me, look, they erased the private company and they put Guam Memorial Hospital that this employee went, because the law requires you have to go to Guam Memorial Hospital to be assessed if you have a claim for workers' compensation. But she said, look, they didn't change the address. The address is still the private clinic. That's the last time I spoke to the governor. So she knows, because she knows who she was advised. The former board chairman that did these cases was a major advisor, of which she commends him for the success in her election. And yet you, Mr. Baza, came and said, oh, I'm in conflict at the Civil Service Commission, but the moment you get to the port, the moment you're hired there with your six-figure salary, you just settled these cases, even without private counsel, who's there to represent the interests of the port. Because, Mr. Chairman, you allowed the general manager to get rid of your experienced counsel that could have properly handled these cases, because the agenda was to address payment.
Senator Brown, do you have a question?
I'm sorry, let me finish my comment, Madam Chair.
Please,
the constant
get to your
intercession of you on these
question,
serious
Senator.
matters is very disturbing.
Thank you, and I'd just like to remind everyone, Senator Brown, personal inference to the character of anyone testifying
If
or
the
senators
character
here.
is questionable, Madam Chair, then we have every right to question the character of anyone
Senator,
who's
we
coming
have a
before
rule
this body
before us. I
who's
ask you to
asking for
please follow the
confirmation.
rules. Senator
Well,
Brown,
you can
state
set
your
your
question.
rules, but if the
State your question, we will move
I'm asking
on.
the question. I don't need your continued interruption.
So please state
Well,
your
I'm
question,
beginning to
Senator
question
Brown.
your ability to properly preside over these cases, this hearing, by continuing to interject. I've got the time, Madam Chair. Do you have other appointments?
We have other folks here
I
waiting
understand,
for
but
appointments
we
on
have
this
critical
agenda.
questions. We just don't confirm
I understand.
people
You can also
without
submit your
ensuring that
questions in writing to the committee. We'll gladly forward them and get the answers for you. Senator Brown,
Senator
please
Shelton,
state
you
your
really are making me
questions.
question your capability of presiding when you continue to erupt on other members of this body that have legitimate questions and concerns, because there are legitimate questions and concerns that are being raised here. Unless you're trying to silence us. Is that what you're attempting to do?
Not at all, Senator
Well, then
Brown. We've
please stop
given time to
interjecting.
every member of this
Please stop
body who's here, and I've
interjecting then,
asked you
Madam
to
Chair.
please state your question.
stop
We've allowed for a
interjecting.
second round of questions, and
stop
so if you have your
interjecting.
2 questions, please ask
Please
them.
stop interjecting. So, Mr. Baza, I mean, for you to go down and settle these cases, I mean, you've come and confirmed before this committee you didn't even have proper counsel. Whose interest are you representing then?
The interest of the people of Guam.
And you think you're doing that, and now you believe after such a short time of having served in your capacity without a cooling off period, you should be allowed to go back and serve on the board?
You know, Senator Brown, you know, you've insulted me.
You've insulted all of us.
You've insulted me.
You've lied before this commission. You've lied before this committee, Mr. Baza.
You spent $70,000 a month for legal counsel.
You've lied before this committee.
You guys, you know this. You know it crystal clear. And I'm not trying to be radical here, but record is showing you paid legal counsel $70,000 a month to perform legal work for you.
I'm not asking you
so
about
please,
legal counsel, Mr. Baza. Those
you're
issues were
insulting
reviewed
me.
by the PUC and the PUC.
I think my
Mr.
integrity
Baza, allow me
speaks
to
for
finish.
itself.
Answer my question.
I think you know, you're insulting my integrity, and I'm not going to answer
You're
your question,
insulting everyone's
ma'am.
integrity.
Because, you
Answer
know,
my question.
Your
Can we
behavior,
please have
your
some
behavior
decorum
here
here?
is
Please
the
stick
same.
to the question. Thank you.
Your behavior here is the same as when you were behaving when I was chairman. You were
Mr.
disrespectful to
Baza,
me.
Mr. Baza, please answer the question.
Sorry.
Okay. Another question, Senator Brown.
Well, I think this particular nominee has difficulty answering questions and being untruthful, which makes it very difficult for me to want to support his nomination. With that, I have no further comments at this point.
Okay, thank you. Well, now, Senator Blas, nothing? Okay. Senator Lujan, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Mr. Baza. Good afternoon, Mr. Santos. Good afternoon, Senator Respicio. Welcome back to the People's House. If you don't mind, I'm going to focus a little bit on what we were briefed on today. We are in a very critical situation, a critical time in the midst of this geopolitical situation that we're in. The port being in a very critical position and needing to enhance the port in all ways, security and all that. What have you? I know it was presented to us this morning, and I know the chairperson was there, myself, and the speaker were there in the master plan of the Port Authority. Was it presented already to the board? Yeah, either one. Yeah.
I know they came out. I guess
Okay.
they're here.
Okay.
I'm not down there, so I wouldn't know.
Okay. In your opinion, again, you know, knowing the critical nature we're at and the master plan that has come out and what you know of the master plan, is there anything in the plan that maybe was in a second or third phase that maybe should be moved up to a higher phase because of the situation that we're in right now and the critical nature and you know the one place where everything comes in, military goods, the civilian goods, and all that?
I think I can answer that question. I think when we got our consultant to be coming here, it's been, you know, I mean, we're doing our projects
Sure.
when we need it, and we're not like making him tell us what to do. We're telling them what we
Sure.
want to do.
Sure.
We're telling them the direction that we want to go. We're fast tracking this. You know, we're the customer, so we tell our consultants, through of course the direction of our general manager, this is where we want to go. We're looking at the security and safety of our people. We want to make sure we get our gantries. We want to make sure we get our equipment. We're going to make sure we get everything that we can. Harden the wharves down at the port. We need to do that. We know we're having problems with this port's old. So we need, the bottom line is that, you know, we're telling these people, this is what we want to do. This is where we want to go, you know, and we're fast tracking this. We've been. And we're not letting the consultant tell us what to do. We're telling them where we want to go and what we want to do. That I can tell you.
Sure, and that's what I mean. Again, the consultant could put the plan together, but whether, whatever phase the port is working on, and whether or not phase 3 should probably be phase 1 now because of the situation that we're in, that's what I'm wondering. Where are we at in supply chain right now in regards to being able to get goods and services and the shipping routes at this point? Where are we at in that supply chain? And either one, Mr. Santos or Mr. Baza, or even the general manager at this point, because I want to see if we're all on the same page with this.
I'll defer to our general manager.
Anyway, Senator, good afternoon. Anyway, our procurement now is up to par. When we want to request for any equipment, any products for the port, now it will not take long for our procurement, for what the port are requiring, what we need at present time. And we must always tell the manager to go ahead and expedite what we need for the port operation.
The other thing also in the Buy USA situation, I know that we were trying to get the exemption of the Buy USA. Did we get an exemption? And if not, why not? And again, if services or goods are not available in the USA, where do we go? I mean, don't we have allies? Can we buy from our allies? I'm sure that we probably won't buy from China, but we'll probably buy from our allies. Where are we at in regards to the Buy USA?
Thank you, Senator Lujan, for asking the question and also for being at the meeting this morning and our oversight chair and the speaker as well. The Buy American waiver is something that has not been issued by the Biden administration or even the Trump administration. President Obama was the last one to give an agency waiver. We're in active discussions with MARAD and also with the Department of Defense with respect to your question.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The critical nature of the port. Again, you bring in the goods and stuff for the construction, for the military and all that, right? Now, let me ask you this, because there's going to be the environmental impact statement that's going to happen. I mean, happening in regards to the missile defense system here. Will the missile defense system come to the port as well?
All the goods and services, all the military construction will come in on commercial carriers, which will come to the port. So at the presentation, you saw that we did analysis what it would mean if one gantry crane went down. It'll set back the military readiness program by about 4 years. If 2 gantry cranes went down, you could forget about military readiness as well as the needs of the civilian, the community cargo throughput coming in. DOD is very concerned about the situation of our gantry cranes, and this is not something that we just started talking about. This is something we've talked about since I became general manager. It's something that the former general managers have been talking about. The STS gantry crane acquisition is a huge component of the master plan update, and you could see how everything is positioned in response to the Pacific deterrence and the Indo-Pacific tragedy. And so this plan represents what we need to do over the next 5 to 7 years.
And the reason why I ask this, because obviously, again, I mean, the Chinese carrier was just spotted, less than 400 miles off our shores here. So we're in constant surveillance, and the port is a big target. Port is a big target for, I mean, again, this situation that we're facing and all that. Is the port up to par with everything that's going on? Have they been informed? The new members coming in and all that. And I know, Mr. Santos, you said you were off for a period of time. Your tenure, I think, had expired, and then now you've been renominated to come on board, right? Yeah. And so, have you been briefed on those situations in regards to? I mean, I know you know the geopolitical situation that we're in right now, but in regards to the port enhancement and where we're at and what must be done now, what can wait a little bit and what can't at this point?
As Senator, I always rely on our Department of Defense. They really they got so many secrets that we didn't even know. And I'll guarantee you now that before we know that there's a Chinese carrier out there, about 400 miles west of Guam. The Department of Defense knew that already.
Is there, let me ask this as well. I mean, is there an enhanced security, are there enhanced security measures in place then, knowing that all goods, whether it's civilian and military stuff, comes, you know, through the port? Is there an enhanced security that is also undertaken by not only in the civilian side of the house, but in the military? Because I would assume at this point that if I was Chinese, I would do whatever I can to be able to stop whatever comes in here because, you know, we're aiming at them as like they're aiming at us. So is there enhanced security that is again augmented by the federal side, the military side?
Anyway, Senator, I retired, like I say, in the Navy for 20 years. I spent 16 years at sea with different type of ship. And we know how we operate at sea, that nobody even know it. I guarantee you. Even our submarine, we didn't even know. But they know already the target. So I believe that we're really safe here in Guam. And we rely and put our trust in our Departments of Defense. They really know what's going on. They are not sleeping. Many of us are sleeping at night, but the Navy are not sleeping. They are on guard at all time. You know, once they push the missile in China or in Korea, I believe the Navy will intercept that thing before you get to Guam. And I believe that. That is my own opinion, my experience in the Navy.
If I could add, the chairman's been very influential on the board to guide the direction of the port. As former harbor master, he made it very clear that we have to apply for a port security grant to do a radar intrusion system. Not sure if you saw the other day, we issued a notice to proceed, and that contract was awarded to G4S, and so that radar intrusion system will detect any vessel out there, I think up to 72 nautical miles, and we're also undergoing a RAP, a Regional Resiliency Assessment Plan with CNMI through the Homeland Security and CISA. So there are all these assessments being done with respect to cybersecurity and other threats that are imminent in our area.
Yeah, how safe is your IT system then now at this point?
Well, the Coast Guard was just there maybe 2 weeks ago, and they did their pinging. They did report back, you know, the positive, the negatives, the areas of concern. One of the major things that they told us was the port employees are very responsive. They know what phishing is all about, that when they tried to make an email look like it came from the Coast Guard, not a single employee clicked on the link or opened it up. On a periodic basis, the employees get emails supposedly from me saying, hey, you have some time, I need your help. So that's active exercises. It's just something simple as housekeeping, not writing passwords on calendars or post-it notes right next to the keyboard. Those are general housekeeping measures that we have to be aware of. That assessment was been made possible by the Coast Guard.
Are there any additional security measures then undertaken by the port now that we're maybe in an enhanced situation with the geopolitical situation?
When we transitioned to the JD Enterprise from JD Edwards from the JD Enterprise, Oracle is the base software. Oracle is providing all the firewalls necessary for cybersecurity. We're going through a terminal operating system study and IT study. That's all part of the master plan also to identify what kind of measures need to be taken. And these will require significant investments for us to make as a port and as a community, maybe upwards of $5 million alone just for our new terminal operating system and our IT system. The financial management system cost about $2.5 million, and we integrated everything is on the cloud now with all those firewalls and security measures. And those are the things that Mr. Baza has helped us while he was Deputy General Manager. Those are the things that Chairman Santos has been guiding us with, and also Dot Harris is a former Chief Planner at the port. And so you're seeing the composition of the port board to keep those individuals with the institutional knowledge who still want to serve. And I hope that, notwithstanding what happened today, I hope that you would think about the kind of role that they play on the board and how critical that kind of institutional knowledge is required for us to, to stay 100% operational and to keep moving us forward.
Yeah. Let me ask the nominees as well here. Yeah, we've talked, I mean, years, the Jones Act has been impediment for our situation, and maybe not only us, but I only speak for us here in Guam. No other, I wasn't voted by any other destination to serve. So the Jones Act, I introduced a resolution for a 24-month waiver in regards to the Jones Act. Are you in favor of at least a 24-month waiver? Knowing that an outright repeal of the Jones Act would probably be impossible, but because precedents had been set in regards to waivers of Jones Act for a situation where I think it was I forget the name, the pipeline system was hacked, and then in Puerto Rico as well, and both waivers were given by both presidents, President Trump and President Biden. Are you in agreement on at least a 24-month waiver of the Jones Act? Mr. Baza? Mr. Baza? Yeah. Yes, yeah. Yeah.
For me, I would, when it comes to the Jones Act, I would like to defer that to the governor of Guam.
I know the governor's in support of actually.
Yeah.
She's even more severe than me. She wants it completely gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mr. Santos, are you in agreement with where you've been in the port for a long time and you know how the Jones Act works?
Even since 1970, they've been talking about Jones Act. And it's very hard to change that.
Sure.
Because how the senator back in the state,
Sure.
they have good relationship with the U.S. They're so there.
And that's why I'm not asking. That's why at this point I've learned from, and Senator Spicia knows is I learned from our trying to get an exemption, a full exemption of cabotage in our open skies, that we asked for the full loaf and we got a half a loaf. So this time I'm asking for a half a loaf, and maybe we get a quarter at this point. So we take incremental steps, and like I said, presidents, I'm thinking we put a good argument forth regarding a waiver, and waiver is just 24 months. Give us 24 months of breathing room, and they might give us 12 or 9, but it's a start. And so again, whether or not they're granted, but I'm not asking for a complete exemption. I'm asking for a waiver. Would you be in favor of a waiver, and if the waiver is given prior to that, we will get notice, and we need to be able to make sure that these other ships are ready to service Guam for this short period of time, because if we get the waiver and we don't jump on it, you have the time that will come and go, and we haven't taken care of it. So are you in favor of that then? I mean, I know it's hard, but I'm in
favor of that. Once they lift the Jones Act, that means merchandise will be less than what we are paying now.
Well, a waiver does not make it less. A waiver is, if we implement it and we get other ships to be able to do that, but if we just get a waiver and we don't act on it, then the prices will be the same. So that's what I'm saying. If we do get the waiver, if there's a hint of possibly getting it, we need to come together and go to these other shipping companies and say, hey, look, we only have 5, 6, 7, 8 months, or even a year. Can you service us for this amount of time? And that's what I'm saying. You're ready to do that should the time come, because we can't just sit there and know that they're going to come. We're going to have to seek them out, right?
I agree with you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. In regards to it was talked about, of course, the drugs coming into the port, at different ports and things like that. I as well met with Director Pareto and Chief Ignacio, not just prior to the election, but afterwards as well. And they come to the conclusion that there probably is a good amount that comes in, but we need that comes in the port and or other ports of entries here in Guam. But likewise, the tools and mechanisms are not all there to be able to fight this. I got some news that the 1st of May, he introduced the bill called the Comprehensive Crystal Meth Prevention and Improved Law Enforcement and Safety Act of 2023, which will have a designated force of the police department, likewise with the Customs and Quarantine, and also canine dogs, specifically to fight the war on drugs. And they will not be disbanded until the fact that Guam, that we're declared that we're again that we are beating this situation, not given the tools and mechanisms, and I know it was talked earlier about the partnership with Port Police and or GPD and Port Police, but there comes a big difference here, because the Customs and Quarantine, they're not limited. I mean, the Customs Quarantine not limited by the Fourth Amendment. They can actually, if they suspect drugs coming in, they can actually go and check whether or not. All they need to do is suspect it, right? Unlike Guam Police Department or Port Police, they have to have probable cause to be able to do it. So that's why when you say, well, how come the police, they can't? The only ones that have the waiver in regards to suspecting are Customs and Border Control. That's the big difference. So we need to be able to enhance that. Our ports of entry, the frontline people, there are Customs and Quarantine. They're the ones that can act on suspicions. Your port police cannot do that, and neither can the Guam police. They are guided by they're not exempt from the Fourth Amendment. General Manager, Senator Respicio, when would this be the board be presented with the master plan and to move on?
Mr. Vice Chair, we have a public hearing conducted by Bureau of Statistical Plans on Friday at 3 p.m. at the port. And then once BSP takes all the public comments, Governor gets to review the document. Then after that, it'll be formally transmitted to the legislature, to the legislative secretary. Mm-hmm. And then the legislature will have its opportunity to have the public hearings, and as quickly as the legislature can adopt that plan is when the plan will be adopted.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything in that plan at this point that you? How many phases is this port plan?
Well, the plan is not your traditional 30-year master plan.
Sure.
By design, we needed something to guide us for the next 5 to 7 years. And as I said publicly over and over, there's nothing in that plan save for the tariff simplification, which is still revenue neutral, mm-hmm. that requires the Public Utilities Commission to approve it. Everything in that plan, we've already positioned ourselves as a port to go after what's happening with the geopolitical issues, be able to respond to say if the port's not ready, then the military will not be ready. And that's how we've been positioning ourselves.
Okay, so the plan was designed then basically that if it was a phase 2 or 3 or 4 phases, that maybe 4 should be probably 2 right now and all that? So
it's not designed that way, but it does build on the port modernization. And the $50 million that Senator Brown, as former general manager, presided over. We successfully completed that chapter. And what we're saying is unless we do the crane replacement, unless we harden our wharves, unless we address our facilities in the next immediately, then we're just looking for a service life extension. And then we're chasing bigger grant opportunities to do a field replacement of F1, Gulf Pier field replacement.
Okay.
It's a lot.
Sure, yeah. Mr. Santos, you ready to take on these new challenges in regards to what's happening, and not just the port, but I'm sure these geopolitical situations we have here, and the port again being a main target, and things could change, and so are you ready for that challenge?
I'm ready to meet that challenge, Senator.
Thank you. Mr. Baza?
When given the opportunity, I'm ready.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you very much, Vice Chair. And thank you to everyone who came out today for this part of our public hearing to hear the appointment of Mr. Luis Baza and Mr. Francisco Santos. I want to state for the record as well that we received testimony in support of your appointments from your fellow board member, Conchita Taitino, and from the general manager, Mr. Roy Respicio, former senator, and for Mr. Baza, also from attorney Ron Uggan, all in support of your nominations. Again, thank you everyone for being here. This concludes our hearing for these two individuals. We'll take a 5-minute break and come back for the next agenda items. Suduas Masi.